When a billion-dollar CEO asks a janitor to pretend to be hers for 7 minutes, she has no idea she's bargaining with a man who has everything to hide and nothing left to lose. What starts as a desperate lie at a midnight gala becomes the most dangerous truth either of them has ever faced. One single father, one woman drowning in power. 7 minutes that will shatter everything they thought they knew about love, sacrifice, and the cost of being seen. Stay with me until the end of this story. If it moves you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The clock on Evelyn Cross's desk read 11:47 p.m. when she realized she had made a catastrophic mistake. Her office occupied the entire 52nd floor of the Meridian Tower, a gleaming monument to excess in downtown Seattle. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a painting she owned but never really saw. Tonight, the lights below blurred into a smear of gold and white, distorted by the rain that hadn't stopped falling since October began. She sat perfectly still in her leather chair, hands folded on the glass desk, staring at the invitation that had arrived 3 hours ago by courier. Embossed letters on cream cardstock. The annual Innovators Gala, tomorrow night, and written in elegant script at the bottom, +1 required, +1. 2 words that shouldn't have the power to unravel a woman worth $3 billion. Evelyn had built CrossTech from nothing. 15 years ago, she'd been a 25-year-old programmer working out of a studio apartment, surviving on ramen and spiked. Now she employed 4,000 people across 6 countries. She'd been on the cover of Forbes twice. She'd testified before Congress. She'd stared down corporate raiders and hostile takeovers without flinching. But she couldn't produce a date for a charity gala. The irony tasted like copper in her mouth. Her phone buzzed. A text from Diane Chen, her CFO. Confirmed. Richard Castellano will be there bringing his wife. Don't show up alone. Makes you look weak. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Richard Castellano, the venture capitalist who'd been circling CrossTech for months, looking for any sign of vulnerability, any crack in the armor. He was old school, traditional, the kind of man who still believed women in tech were novelties rather than forces of nature. If she arrived alone while he paraded his perfect family, it would feed every sexist narrative he'd been planting in boardrooms across the city. She needed someone, anyone. But her contacts list was a graveyard of professional relationships, distant acquaintances, and people who wanted something from her. There was no one she could call at midnight and ask for a favor this personal, no one who wouldn't see it as leverage. The elevator chimed in the outer office. Evelyn's head snapped up. She dismissed her assistant hours ago. Security was supposed to clear the executive floors after 10. Her hand moved instinctively toward the phone, ready to call building security, when she heard the sound of a vacuum cleaner starting up. The night cleaning crew. She exhaled slowly, tension bleeding from her shoulders. Just the janitors. She'd forgotten they came through after hours. The vacuum's hum grew louder, closer. Through the glass walls of her office, she could see a figure moving in the outer reception area. Male, tall, pushing the vacuum in methodical lines across the carpet. Evelyn stood, intending to close her office door for privacy, when the man looked up. Their eyes met through the glass. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s maybe, dark hair that needed a trim, a gray uniform that hung loose on a lean frame. There was something in his face, a kind of weathered intelligence, the look of someone who'd seen more than his current circumstances suggested. He nodded once, politely, and returned to his work. Evelyn's hand hovered over the door handle. A wild, reckless thought bloomed in her mind. Desperate, probably insane, but desperate times. She opened the door. The man immediately shut off the vacuum. "I'm sorry, Ms. Cross. I didn't realize anyone was still here. I can come back." "What's your name?" Her voice came out sharper than she intended. He blinked. "Lucas. Lucas Reed." "How long have you worked here, Lucas?" 6 months? "And you're here every night?" "Monday through Friday, midnight to 6 a.m. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "Is something wrong? Did I miss something in here last night?" Evelyn studied him. Clean-shaven, clear eyes. Wedding ring tan line on his left hand, but no ring. The uniform was worn but clean, pressed even. He stood straight despite the late hour, despite doing work most people never even noticed. "I have a proposition for you," she said. Lucas's expression shuddered immediately. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Not that kind of proposition." Evelyn felt heat rise in her cheeks. God, she was handling this badly. "I need you to do me a favor, a professional favor. I'll pay you." I'm not sure what kind of favor a janitor could do for a CEO. "Pretend to be my partner for 7 minutes." The words hung in the air between them like something physical. Lucas stared at her. "I'm sorry, what?" Evelyn walked back to her desk, grabbed the invitation, and held it up. "There's a gala tomorrow night. I need to attend with a date, just for appearances. You'd arrive with me, stand by my side for 7 minutes while I greet the important people, and then you can disappear. I'll pay you $5,000. $5,000 to stand next to you for 7 minutes. Yes. That's over $700 a minute. I'm aware of the math." Lucas ran a hand through his hair. "Miss Cross, I appreciate the offer, but 10,000. He stopped. "You're serious?" "Completely serious." Evelyn heard the desperation creeping into her voice and hated it. "I wouldn't ask if I had any other option, but I need someone who won't turn this into something it's not. Someone who won't think I owe them something afterward. Someone who'll take the money and forget this ever happened." "Why me?" "Because you're here. Because I don't know you. Because you look like you could use $10,000, and I need this problem solved." She met his eyes. "Because I'm out of options, and you're my Hail Mary." Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Outside, rain hammered against the windows. The city light seemed to pulse with the rhythm of it. "I have a daughter," he said finally. "Sophie, she's 7. If I'm going to show up to some fancy party pretending to be someone I'm not, I need to know it won't come back on her. No press, no photos in the society pages." "I can arrange that. And afterward, we're done. You don't call me. I don't call you. This is a one-time transaction." "Agreed." He studied her face, searching for something. Whatever he found seemed to satisfy him. "Okay." Evelyn felt something unknot in her chest. "Okay. But I'm going to need a suit. I'll have one sent to you. What's your address?" Lucas hesitated. "I'll pick it up here tomorrow. Less complicated." She didn't push. Everyone had their secrets. "Fine, be here at 6 p.m. The gala starts at 7:30. 7 minutes, Lucas said. 7 minutes. He nodded once, then turned back to his vacuum cleaner. Evelyn watched him resume his methodical work, wondering what the hell she'd just done. Hired a janitor to pose as her boyfriend. Offered him $10,000 for 7 minutes of pretending. But as she gathered her things to finally go home, she felt lighter than she had in months. The problem was solved. Richard Castellano would see her with someone. The narrative would be controlled. What could possibly go wrong in 7 minutes? The next evening, Evelyn stood in front of her closet, paralyzed by choice. She'd attended hundreds of these events, knew the uniform by heart. Elegant but not ostentatious. Designer but not trendy. The kind of dress that commanded respect without demanding attention. Tonight, her hands shook as she pulled out a midnight blue gown. Tom Ford. Simple lines. Sophisticated. Why was she nervous? This wasn't real. Lucas Reed was an employee performing a service. In 7 hours, she'd never see him again. The whole thing was a business transaction, carefully contained and controlled. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Picked up the suit. Fits. See you at 6. L. She'd given him her private number. Another thing that shouldn't have made her stomach flutter. Evelyn forced herself to go through her usual routine. Shower, hair, makeup. The armor of perfection she'd learned to wear like a second skin. By the time she slipped into the gown and her Louboutin heels, she looked exactly like what she was. A woman in complete control. The reflection in the mirror said otherwise. At 5:58 p.m., she stood in the Meridian Tower lobby, watching the elevator numbers descend. Her driver waited outside with the car. Everything was arranged. Everything was perfect. The elevator doors opened. Lucas Reed stepped out, and Evelyn forgot how to breathe. The suit transformed him. Charcoal gray, perfectly tailored to his lean frame. White shirt, no tie. She'd specified business formal, not stuffy. His hair was trimmed, styled back from his face. He'd shaved. The rough edges were gone, replaced by something that looked like it belonged in her world, except for his eyes. Those hadn't changed. Still, that same weathered intelligence, that sense of someone who'd traveled a harder road than his current destination suggested. "Miss Cross," he said. "Evelyn. If we're doing this, you need to call me Evelyn." Evelyn. Her name and his voice did something strange to her pulse. "You look beautiful." "You don't look like a janitor." "I'm not. Not tonight, anyway." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" She took it, and the warmth of him through the suit jacket was shockingly intimate. They walked through the lobby together, past the security desk where the night guard did a double take, out into the rain where her driver waited with an umbrella. In the back of the Mercedes, Lucas sat carefully apart from her, hands folded in his lap. "Nervous?" Evelyn asked. "Terrified," he admitted. "I've never been to anything like this. Don't know which fork to use. Couldn't tell you the difference between a Cabernet and a Merlot. The secret is that nobody else really can either. They're all just pretending." "The whole world is people pretending to know what they're doing?" "More or less." Lucas smiled, and something in Evelyn's chest cracked open. "That's oddly comforting. There's one thing you should know," she said as they merged into downtown traffic. "Richard Castellano, older man, silver hair, expensive taste in everything. He'll probably try to engage you in conversation. Be polite, but don't offer information. If he pushes, just say you're in consulting." "Consulting in what?" "Doesn't matter. Consulting is code for, I don't want to talk about work. He'll respect that." "And if he doesn't?" "Then I'll handle it." Evelyn looked at him. "This is my problem, Lucas. You're just here to stand next to me. For 7 minutes. For 7 minutes." They rode in silence for a while. The rain had softened to mist, the city lights refracting through water droplets on the windows. Evelyn found herself hyper-aware of Lucas's presence, the way he sat, the way he breathed, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with the leather interior of the car. "Can I ask you something?" Lucas said quietly. "Sure. Why don't you have someone real for this? A woman like you, successful, brilliant, stunning, seems like you'd have men lining up." Evelyn laughed, but it came out bitter. "The kind of men who line up for women like me aren't looking for a person. They're looking for a prize, something to display at parties and leverage in business deals. I got tired of being someone's accessory." "So you hired a janitor to accessorize for one night instead. The difference is you'll leave when I ask you to." Lucas was quiet. Then, "For what it's worth, anyone who treats you like an accessory is an idiot." Evelyn looked at him sharply, but his expression was sincere. Not flattery, just truth. "Thank you," she said softly. The car pulled up to the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. Camera flashes immediately exploded against the windows as photographers recognized her vehicle. "Oh God," Lucas muttered. "Just smile and keep moving. They're more interested in me than you." The driver opened the door. Evelyn stepped out first, immediately slipping into her public persona, shoulders back, chin up, the slight smile that gave nothing away. Lucas emerged behind her, and she felt him take her hand. His palm was calloused, warm, steady. Together, they walked the red carpet while cameras clicked like insects. Evelyn barely heard the shouted questions. She was too focused on Lucas's presence beside her, solid and grounding in a way she hadn't expected. Inside the hotel, the ballroom was exactly what she'd anticipated. Crystal chandeliers, orchestra, 500 people in formal wear drinking champagne and pretending to care about innovation in education, which was the gala's supposed purpose. 7 minutes starts now, Evelyn murmured. "Lead the way." They circulated. Evelyn introduced Lucas to the mayor, 2 city council members, and the CEO of a pharmaceutical company she was courting for a partnership. Each time, Lucas smiled, shook hands, said exactly the right amount of nothing. He was good at this. Too good for someone who'd never done it before. 5 minutes in, Richard Castellano appeared with his wife, Patricia. Perfectly coiffed, perfectly matched, perfectly choreographed. "Evelyn!" Richard's smile was all teeth. "How wonderful to see you. And who's this?" "Richard, Patricia, this is Lucas Reed." "Lucas. Richard Castellano." The men shook hands. Richard's grip was aggressive, the kind of handshake that was really a challenge. Lucas met it without flinching. Reed, Richard said. That name sounds familiar. What field are you in? Consulting, Lucas said smoothly. Consulting. Of course. Richard's smile sharpened. And how did you meet our brilliant Evelyn? We met through work, Lucas said. She came into my life when I needed someone who understood what it meant to start from nothing. Evelyn's breath caught. It was the perfect answer, vague enough to be meaningless, personal enough to sound real. How lovely, Patricia said warmly. It's so nice to see Evelyn with someone. She works so hard, doesn't she? She does, Lucas agreed. But that's what happens when you actually built something instead of inheriting it. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Richard's smile froze. Patricia's eyes widened. Evelyn wanted to simultaneously throttle Lucas and kiss him. Well, Richard said tightly. Yes, building things, very admirable, if you'll excuse us. They departed like a ship changing course, leaving an awkward wake. Lucas winced. Too much? Way too much, Evelyn said. Then she smiled. But God, that felt good. I probably shouldn't have. No, you definitely shouldn't have. But I'm glad you did. They stood together at the edge of the ballroom, watching the crowd swirl around them like a tide. The orchestra played something classical and forgettable. Waiters circulated with champagne and canapes. 7 minutes are up, Lucas said. Evelyn checked her watch. 7:42 p.m. He was right. You can go if you want. I'll have my driver take you home. Lucas was quiet for a moment. Then, do you want me to go? The question hung between them, weighted with something neither of them wanted to name. No, Evelyn admitted. I don't. Then I'll stay. You don't have to. The deal was 7 minutes. I know, but maybe I want to see what 8 minutes feels like. 9, 10. His eyes found hers. Maybe I want to know what happens when we stop counting. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. This was a mistake. She knew it was a mistake. Lucas Reed was her employee, a janitor she'd hired to play pretend for a single night. Getting involved beyond that was messy and complicated and exactly the kind of entanglement she'd built her life to avoid. But when he offered his hand and asked, "Dance with me?" she took it. They moved onto the dance floor as the orchestra shifted into a waltz. Lucas's hand settled on her waist, warm through the thin fabric of her gown. His other hand clasped hers gently. I should warn you, he said, I learned to dance from YouTube videos. Then you're about to embarrass us both. But he didn't. He moved with surprising grace, leading her through the steps with a quiet confidence that shouldn't have existed. They turned across the polished floor, and Evelyn found herself leaning into him, her cheek nearly brushing his shoulder. Where did you really learn this? She asked. My wife, Lucas said quietly. Ex-wife. She loved to dance. Made me take lessons before our wedding. What happened? She died. Car accident. 3 years ago. Evelyn's chest constricted. Lucas, I'm so sorry. Sophie was 4. She barely remembers her mother now, which somehow hurts more than the grief. His voice was steady, but she heard the tremor underneath. I work nights because the daycare rates are cheaper and I can be home with her during the day. Pick her up from school. Make her dinner. Be the parent she deserves. That's why you're a janitor. You're raising your daughter. That's why I'm a janitor. He met her eyes. And why $10,000 for 7 minutes sounded like a miracle I couldn't refuse. Evelyn saw him clearly now. Not an employee, not a transaction, a man who'd lost everything and rebuilt his life around his daughter's happiness. A man doing invisible work in the middle of the night so he could be visible when it mattered. You're a good father, she said softly. I'm trying to be. The song ended. They stood together on the dance floor as couples moved around them, changing partners, starting new dances. I should probably mingle, Evelyn said without moving. Probably. Do the networking thing. Makes sense. Neither of them let go. Lucas smiled. How about this? You do what you need to do. Work the room. I'll get a drink at the bar and try not to embarrass you further. You didn't embarrass me. I told a venture capitalist he inherited his success. Like I said, you didn't embarrass me. He laughed, and the sound was warm and real and absolutely nothing like the polished chuckles that filled the rest of the room. Then he stepped back, released her hand, and walked toward the bar. Evelyn watched him go, feeling unmoored. The next hour passed in a blur of conversations she barely registered. She talked to donors about educational initiatives. She deflected questions about Crosstech's quarterly earnings. She smiled and nodded and played her part perfectly, while her attention kept drifting across the room to where Lucas stood at the bar, nursing a single beer and looking completely out of place. At 9 o'clock, Diane Chen materialized at her elbow. "So," Diane said, "Lucas Reed, who is he really?" "Just someone I'm seeing." The lie came easily now, too easily. "He's not in our database. No social media presence, no corporate connections." Diane's expression was sharp. "You always vet people, Evelyn. Always. But this guy appears out of nowhere and you bring him to the most important networking event of the season? Maybe I'm tired of vetting people. Or maybe you're making decisions based on something other than logic." Diane's voice dropped. "Be careful. Richard's already asking questions. If there's anything in this guy's past that could be used against you, there isn't. You don't know that." "I know enough." Diane studied her face. "My God, you actually care about him." "Don't be ridiculous. I barely know him." "Then why do you keep looking at him like he's the only real thing in this room?" Evelyn had no answer for that. At 10 o'clock, she extracted herself from a conversation about venture capital and went looking for Lucas. She found him on the hotel's terrace, alone, leaning against the railing and watching the rain that had started falling again. "Had enough?" she asked, joining him. "Of expensive champagne and people who think their money makes them interesting? About 2 hours ago." "Yet you stayed." "I said I would." They stood in comfortable silence. The rain fell in sheets now, turning the city into a watercolor painting. Inside, the party continued without them. "Can I ask you something?" Evelyn said. "Seems fair since I asked you something earlier." "Why did you really say yes? $10,000 is a lot of money, but you could have just said no. Could have walked away from the crazy CEO offering you cash to play pretend." Lucas was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because when you asked me, you looked terrified. This woman who runs a billion-dollar company, who appears on magazine covers, who testified before Congress, you looked absolutely terrified of showing up somewhere alone." He turned to face her, and I understood that. The fear of being seen as incomplete just because you're on your own. I've felt that every day since my wife died. So when you asked, I didn't see a CEO hiring an employee. I saw someone who needed help, same as me. Evelyn's throat tightened. "I'm not who you think I am. I think you're exactly who I think you are. Brilliant, driven, lonely as hell." His voice was gentle. "Same as me." "This isn't real, Lucas. We're playing pretend." "Are we?" The question terrified her more than anything Richard Castellano could do. "I should get you home," Evelyn said. "It's late. Your daughter is at her grandmother's for the night. I arranged it because I thought 7 minutes might run long and I didn't want to rush." "So you plan to stay?" "I hope to stay. There's a difference." Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him. Rain misted around them. Inside, the orchestra played on, and standing on this terrace with a man she'd known for less than 24 hours, she felt more seen than she had in years. "What are we doing?" she whispered. "I don't know, but I don't think it's pretending anymore." He reached for her hand. This time, there was no audience, no cameras, no 7-minute timer, just his calloused palm against hers, warm and steady and real. Evelyn should have pulled away, should have remembered all the reasons this was a terrible idea, should have paid him and sent him home and gone back to her controlled, orderly life where people like Lucas Reed stayed safely on the other side of the glass. Instead, she stepped closer. "I don't do this," she said. "I don't let people in. I don't trust easily. I've built my entire life around being self-sufficient because depending on someone means they can hurt you. I know, because I've done the same thing. So this is a bad idea. Probably the worst. We barely know each other. True. This could get incredibly messy. Almost certainly. And yet," Evelyn said, "I don't want you to leave." Lucas smiled. "Then I won't." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull back, time to remember all the logical reasons why this was impossible. But Evelyn had spent her entire life being logical, making smart decisions, choosing power over vulnerability. Tonight, for the first time in years, she chose something else. When Lucas kissed her, it was soft and careful, and nothing like she expected. Not demanding, not aggressive, just honest. A question rather than a statement. She answered by pulling him closer. The rain fell harder. The city lights blurred. Inside the ballroom, the gala continued without them. The networking, the politics, the careful dance of power and influence that had ruled her life for so long. Out here, none of it mattered. When they finally broke apart, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "So," he said, voice rough, "that was more than 7 minutes. Considerably more. Any regrets?" Evelyn thought about it. About the complications this would bring, the questions, the vulnerability. About standing on a terrace in the rain, kissing a man who cleaned her office floors and made her feel more understood than anyone who'd ever shared her tax bracket. "Not yet," she said. "Good, because I'd really like to take you to dinner sometime. Actual dinner, not as your fake boyfriend, as someone who'd very much like to be your real something. I don't think you can afford the restaurants I usually go to." "Then we'll go somewhere better. Sophie's favorite diner. Best pancakes in Seattle, and absolutely no one gives a damn about quarterly earnings." Evelyn laughed. "When? Tomorrow night? If you're free?" "I'll move meetings. For pancakes?" "For you." Lucas kissed her again, and this time it was deeper, more certain. This time it felt like a beginning rather than a borrowed moment. Inside, someone called her name. Evelyn heard it distantly, knew she should go back in, should finish playing her part. But Lucas's hand was warm in hers, and the rain was falling, and 7 minutes had stretched into 3 hours without either of them noticing. "I should probably go back in," she said reluctantly. "Probably. Do my duty as a host. Makes sense. But I don't want to." "Then don't." Lucas squeezed her hand. "Stay out here with me. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. For once in your life, choose what you want instead of what you should do." It was reckless, irresponsible, completely at odds with everything Evelyn had built her reputation on. She stayed. They stood together on the terrace, hands clasped, while the gala continued without her. At some point, her phone buzzed with increasingly frantic texts from Diane. Evelyn silenced it without looking. "I'm going to pay for this tomorrow," she said. "Worth it?" "Ask me in the morning." But she already knew the answer. At midnight, they finally left the hotel through a side entrance, avoiding the departing crowds. The Mercedes pulled up, and they slipped into the back seat like conspirators. "Where to?" the driver asked. Evelyn looked at Lucas. "I should take you home. My truck's still at the Meridian Tower. I can get an Uber from there." "Or," Evelyn said slowly, "you could come to my place. For coffee. Just coffee. And conversation. Nothing more. Unless you want there to be more, but no pressure either way because this is already complicated enough and I don't want to—" Lucas stopped her rambling with another kiss. "Coffee sounds perfect," he said against her lips. "And conversation. And whatever else happens that we're both too scared to plan but maybe ready to risk." The driver pulled away from the hotel without waiting for specific directions. He'd been driving Evelyn long enough to know where home was. They rode through the rain-washed streets, Lucas's hand warm in hers, and Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying, completely illogical hope. But as the city lights streamed past and Lucas's thumb traced circles on her palm, she decided that maybe, just maybe, some risks were worth taking, even if they started with a lie. Especially if they ended with truth. Evelyn's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building that had been featured in Architectural Digest twice. Glass and steel and carefully curated minimalism. Everything in its place. Nothing that didn't serve a purpose. Lucas stood in the entryway, still in his borrowed suit, and looked around like he'd stepped into a museum. "This is where you live?" he asked quietly. "Most nights." Evelyn kicked off her heels, immediately losing 3 inches of height. "Some nights I just sleep at the office." "That's not living." That's existing. She didn't have an answer for that, so she led him through the vast living room toward the kitchen. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a photograph. The rain had stopped, leaving the glass streaked and glittering. "Coffee?" she asked, suddenly nervous in her own space. "Or I have wine. Whiskey. Water if you prefer." "Evelyn." Lucas caught her hand. "Breathe." She realized she'd been talking too fast, moving too quickly, trying to fill the silence with action. Old habits. When things got personal, stay busy, stay moving, never slow down enough to be vulnerable. "Sorry," she said. "I'm not good at this." "At what?" "Having someone in my space, letting people see where I actually live." She gestured vaguely at the pristine surroundings. "It's easier to meet at restaurants, hotels. Keep everything contained." Lucas looked at her, and she saw understanding in his eyes. "So bringing me here means something. It means I'm terrified and doing it anyway." "Good. Me too." He was still holding her hand. His thumb traced slow circles on her palm, grounding her. "Coffee," Evelyn decided. "I'll make coffee." The kitchen was state-of-the-art and barely used. She had a chef who meal prepped on Sundays, carefully portioned meals that she reheated between conference calls. The espresso machine was top of the line and mostly operated by her housekeeper. Lucas leaned against the marble counter, watching as she fumbled with the settings. "You don't actually know how to use this, do you?" he asked, amused. "I know how to use it. I just usually have someone else use it for me." She jabbed at a button. Nothing happened. "This is humiliating." "Here." Lucas moved behind her, his body warm against her back as he reached around to adjust the machine. "You have to prime it first. Then the beans, see?" His breath stirred her hair. Evelyn closed her eyes, hyper-aware of every point of contact between them. "I'm a billionaire who can't make her own coffee," she said. "I'm a janitor who's standing in a penthouse kissing a billionaire's neck." She turned in his arms. "You're not just a janitor, and you're not just a billionaire." They stood like that, wrapped together in her sterile kitchen while the espresso machine hissed and gurgled. Lucas's hand settled on her waist, careful and respectful even now. "Tell me about Sophie," Evelyn said. His face transformed. "She's 7, second grade, obsessed with dinosaurs and Hamilton and a YouTube channel about science experiments." "Hamilton?" "We watched it 47 times when it came to Disney+. She knows every word, performs the entire show for me at breakfast." His voice was soft with affection. "She wants to be a paleontologist, or the president, or both. She hasn't decided yet." "She sounds remarkable." "She is. Terrifying and brilliant, and the only thing I've ever done completely right." Lucas met her eyes. "Which is why I need you to understand. She comes first. Always. Whatever this is between us, Sophie's well-being trumps everything. I wouldn't expect anything else. A lot of women say that. Then they meet her and realize dating a single dad means you're dating his kid too, and suddenly it's too complicated." Evelyn thought about that. About what it would mean to be part of Lucas's life, to fit into the small, precious space he'd carved out for his daughter. "Does she know about tonight?" she asked. "I told her I had to go to a fancy party for work. She made me promise to count the chandeliers and report back." He smiled. "There were 6, by the way, in case you were wondering." 6 chandeliers at a party where the richest people in Seattle pretended to care about education, while actually caring about tax breaks and networking. "You're catching on." The espresso machine beeped. Lucas poured 2 cups, added cream to his without asking if she had any, and handed her one. They moved to the living room. Evelyn curled up on the couch, Lucas sitting close enough that their knees touched. Outside, the city glittered like scattered diamonds. "Tell me something real," Lucas said. "Something you don't put in Forbes interviews." Evelyn sipped her coffee, considering. "I'm lonely. Crushingly, devastatingly lonely. I have 4,000 employees and can't name 5 people I'd call friends. I go to parties where everyone wants something from me and come home to silence." She looked at him. "I built this empire thinking success would fill the emptiness, but the higher I climb, the more isolated I become." "Is that why you asked me to the gala? Because you thought a stranger would be safer than someone who actually knows you?" "I thought a stranger would be temporary, controllable. Someone who'd leave when I paid them to leave." She set down her coffee. But then you stayed. You asked me to. I know. That's what terrifies me. Lucas reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so gentle, so casual, that Evelyn's throat tightened. What terrifies me, he said, is that I've spent 3 years building walls around myself and Sophie, keeping everyone at a distance because losing someone destroys you in ways you can't prepare for. And then this beautiful, brilliant woman offers me $10,000 to stand next to her for 7 minutes, and suddenly I'm sitting in her penthouse at 1 a.m. wondering if I'm brave enough to let someone in again. Are you? I don't know yet. Ask me tomorrow. It is tomorrow. Then ask me at a reasonable hour when we've both slept and can think clearly. But neither of them moved to end the night. They talked until 3 a.m. about everything and nothing. Lucas told her about teaching Sophie to ride a bike, about parent-teacher conferences and bedtime routines, and the specific chaos of raising a 7-year-old alone. Evelyn talked about building Crosstech, about the early years when she worked 100 hours a week and survived on ambition and spite, about the moment she realized she'd succeeded but had no one to celebrate with. At some point, she ended up with her head on his shoulder. At some point, his arm wrapped around her. It felt natural. Right. Like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. I should let you sleep, Lucas said, even as his hand traced patterns on her arm. You should. I have to pick up Sophie at 10. Her grandmother will have fed her enough sugar to power a small city. What's her grandmother like? Donna? She's wonderful, my wife's mother. She could have blamed me for the accident. Laura was driving to meet me when it happened, but she never did. Just stepped in to help with Sophie whenever I needed it. His voice roughened. I don't know how I would have survived without her. Evelyn heard the grief underneath his words. 3 years wasn't long enough to heal from losing everything. She knew about that kind of loss, even if hers came from choices rather than tragedy. My mother died when I was 12, she said quietly. Cancer, fast and brutal. My father threw himself into work afterward. I barely saw him. He died of a heart attack when I was 23. She stared at the city lights. City. I think he just gave up. Decided living without her wasn't worth the effort. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me self-sufficiency. How to rely on myself instead of other people. That's not a lesson. That's a survival mechanism. She looked up at him. What's the difference? One keeps you alive. The other keeps you isolated. His fingers traced her jaw. You deserve better than that. No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever looked past the success and the money and seen the scared 12-year-old girl who'd learned to be alone. Evelyn kissed him because she didn't have words, because his kindness undid her in ways his attraction couldn't, because he saw her, actually saw her, and didn't look away. This kiss was different from the ones at the gala. Deeper, more certain, less like a question and more like a promise they were both too afraid to make out loud. When they broke apart, Lucas's eyes were dark with want. I should definitely go, he said, voice rough. You should. Before this goes somewhere we're not ready for. Probably wise. Neither of them moved. Evelyn. Her name was half prayer, half warning. If I stay much longer, I'm going to want things that aren't part of our 7-minute deal. What if I want those things too? Then we should talk about it tomorrow. When we're not exhausted and drunk on whatever this is, when we can think clearly and make smart decisions. He was right. She knew he was right, but every logical bone in her body was screaming at her to ignore logic entirely. Stay, she whispered. Evelyn, not for that, just stay. Sleep here. On the couch or in the guest room or wherever you're comfortable. I just don't want you to leave yet. Lucas studied her face. This isn't smart. I know. We barely know each other. I know that too. And I have to leave by 8 to get home and change before I pick up Sophie. I'll set an alarm. He smiled. You're really bad at casual, aren't you? Terrible at it. Always have been. She took his hand. Stay anyway? Lucas stood, pulling her up with him. Guest room, separate spaces. We're going to do this right. Define right. Slow, careful, with actual conversations about what we want instead of just falling into bed because the chemistry is insane and we're both lonely enough to make bad decisions. That's very mature of you. One of us has to be. He kissed her forehead. Show me where I'm sleeping before I change my mind. Evelyn led him upstairs to the guest suite. It was perfectly appointed and completely impersonal, like everything else in her house. She gathered towels, found an unopened toothbrush, laid everything out like she was playing hostess instead of trying not to beg him to sleep in her bed. Thank you, Lucas said from the doorway, for tonight, for trusting me with your space, for being honest. Thank you for staying past 7 minutes. Best $10,000 I never earned, she laughed. You earned it, just not how either of us expected. Good night, Evelyn. Good night, Lucas. She forced herself to walk away, down the hall to her own bedroom, into the carefully neutral space that felt even emptier than usual. She changed into pajamas, washed her face, went through all the motions of her nighttime routine while her mind spun. What was she doing? Inviting a man she'd known for less than a day to spend the night in her home, kissing him like he was oxygen and she was drowning, opening up about her parents, her loneliness, all the carefully guarded vulnerabilities she never showed anyone? This was reckless, dangerous, the kind of emotional exposure that could destroy everything she'd built. But when she climbed into bed and closed her eyes, all she could think about was Lucas's hand in hers, his voice saying, "You deserved better than that." The way he'd looked at her like she was someone worth knowing, not just someone worth using. She fell asleep with a smile on her face for the first time in months. The alarm went off at 7:30. Evelyn dragged herself awake, unused to sleeping past 5. She found Lucas already up, standing in her kitchen with his borrowed suit jacket off and his sleeves rolled up, making pancakes. "You cook," she said, still foggy with sleep. "I have a 7-year-old. Cooking is a survival skill." He flipped a pancake expertly. "I hope you don't mind. I raided your fridge. Turns out you have excellent ingredients and no idea how to use them. My chef preps meals every Sunday. Your chef is a saint because this kitchen is tragically underutilized." He plated 2 pancakes and held them out. "Eat. You probably skipped dinner last night." He was right. She'd been too nervous to eat at the gala. Evelyn took the plate and sat at the kitchen island, watching Lucas move around her space with easy confidence. "You're very domestic," she observed. 3 years of single parenting will do that." He poured coffee, perfectly, without the machine's assistance. "Sophie and I have a routine. Saturday mornings are pancakes. She's probably driving my mother-in-law crazy right now, demanding them." "Tell me more about her. Sophie, I mean." Lucas leaned against the counter, his own plate forgotten. "She's fierce, inherited her mother's determination and my tendency to overthink everything. She asks 1,000 questions and actually listens to the answers." His expression softened. "After Laura died, I was terrified I'd lose Sophie to grief, that she'd shut down or act out or never recover. But kids are resilient in ways adults aren't. She cried, she raged, she asked impossible questions. And then one day she told me, Mommy would want us to be happy." She was 5 years old. Evelyn's chest ached. "She sounds incredible." "She is, which is why I need to be careful about who I bring into her life." He met her eyes. "I meant what I said last night. Whatever happens between us, Sophie comes first." "I understand that." "Do you? Because if we do this, actually do this, not just pretend for 7 minutes, you need to know what you're signing up for. Single dads come with complications, school schedules and sick days, and a tiny human who will absolutely judge whether you're worth her dad's time. That's a lot of pressure. It's supposed to be. I won't risk her heart on someone who's not sure." Evelyn set down her fork. "I'm not sure about anything right now except that I want to try. I want to know what this could be. I want to have dinner at Sophie's favorite diner and meet the fierce 7-year-old who knows all the words to Hamilton." She took a breath. "But I'm also terrified. I don't know how to do this, how to be with someone, how to let my guard down. I've spent 15 years building walls and I don't know how to dismantle them." "Then we figure it out together, slowly, one day at a time." "Starting with pancakes at a diner?" "Starting with pancakes at a diner." Lucas smiled. "Tonight, 6 o'clock, dress casual, Sophie's rules, not mine." "Should I be nervous?" "Absolutely. She's 7 and completely without filter. She'll ask why you're so rich, whether you believe in climate change, and if you think dinosaurs had feathers. In that order. I can handle that. We'll see. But his eyes were warm, encouraging. They ate breakfast together as the city woke up around them. Lucas told stories about Sophie's latest obsession with the Mesozoic era. Evelyn talked about Crosstech's newest product launch. It was normal and domestic, and absolutely nothing like any morning Evelyn had experienced in years. At 8:15, Lucas reluctantly stood. I really do need to go. Change clothes, get Sophie, pretend I didn't spend the night at a penthouse with a beautiful woman. Will you tell her about me? Eventually. When I figure out how to explain that I met you at work without lying about where I actually work. Evelyn winced. About that, we should probably talk about tonight. We'll talk about all of it tonight. The logistics, the complications, how we make this work in the real world. He pulled her close. But right now, I just want to say that last night was the best night I've had in 3 years. And this morning might be even better. He kissed her goodbye at the door, soft and sweet and full of promise. Then he was gone, and Evelyn was alone in her penthouse, with dishes in the sink and her heart beating too fast. She spent the rest of the day in a fog, responded to emails without reading them carefully, sat through a conference call, and couldn't remember what was discussed. Diane called twice asking about the gala, and Evelyn let it go to voicemail. At 5:30, she stood in her closet staring at designer clothes that were completely wrong for a diner. She finally settled on jeans, actual jeans, not the designer ones, and a soft gray sweater, minimal makeup, hair down instead of in her usual sleek bun. She looked almost normal, almost like someone who belonged in Lucas's world instead of expecting him to fit into hers. The diner was called Rosie's and occupied a corner lot in Ballard. Neon sign, red vinyl booths, the smell of bacon grease and coffee. Evelyn had driven past 1,000 places like this without ever going inside. Lucas was already there, sitting in a booth with a little girl who was all dark curls and bright eyes and concentrated energy. Sophie looked up when Evelyn approached. Are you Dad's fancy friend? Sophie, Lucas warned gently. What? You said we were meeting someone fancy. Sophie studied Evelyn critically. You don't look that fancy right now. You look normal. I like your sweater. Evelyn couldn't help but smile. Thank you. You must be Sophie. Yep, I'm 7 3/4. I like dinosaurs and math and when Dad makes waffles shaped like Mickey Mouse. Do you like dinosaurs? I don't know much about them, to be honest. Sophie's eyes widened with delight. Then I can teach you. Did you know that some scientists think Tyrannosaurus rex had feathers? Not like bird feathers, but more like hair. And velociraptors were actually tiny, not big like in Jurassic Park. Movies lie about dinosaurs a lot. Sophie, Lucas said again, laughing now. Let Evelyn sit down before you give her the full lecture. Evelyn slid into the booth across from them, and Sophie immediately launched into an explanation of the difference between the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. Lucas watched with amused affection as his daughter held court, completely unself-conscious in her enthusiasm. A waitress appeared, older woman, name tag reading Rosie, and grinned at Sophie. The usual, sweetheart? Yes, please, and chocolate milk. You got it. And for your dad and his friend? Lucas ordered a burger. Evelyn asked for the same, not wanting to overthink it. When Rosie left, Sophie turned her attention back to Evelyn. So why are you fancy? Sophie, Dad said you're really important and have a big job. What kind of job? Evelyn glanced at Lucas, who shrugged helplessly. I run a technology company. We make software that helps people communicate, like texting. Sort of. More for businesses. That sounds boring. Sophie! Lucas looked mortified. But Evelyn laughed. You know what? Sometimes it is boring. Lots of meetings and spreadsheets and people talking about things that don't really matter. Sophie considered this. Then why do you do it? That's a very good question. I'm not sure anymore. You should do something fun instead, like studying dinosaurs or being an astronaut. Sophie took a drink of the water already on the table. Or making pancakes for people. Dad makes the best pancakes. He does. I had them this morning. Sophie's eyes went huge. She looked at her father with dawning understanding. Dad, did Evelyn sleep at our house? Lucas's face went red. No, sweetheart, this is complicated. Did you sleep at her house? The entire diner seemed to go quiet. Evelyn wanted to sink through the floor. Sophie, Lucas said carefully, sometimes adults spend time together and it doesn't mean what you think it means. Grandma says when grown-ups have sleepovers, it means they really like each other. Grandma needs to stop explaining things to you. So you really like Evelyn? Lucas met Evelyn's eyes across the table. Something warm and terrifying passed between them. Yeah, sweetheart. I really like Evelyn. Sophie beamed. Good, I like her too. She's honest about stuff being boring and she doesn't know about dinosaurs, so I can teach her. Can she come to our house? I want to show her my fossil collection. Maybe next time. When's next time? I don't know yet. Tomorrow? Sophie? Next weekend? We'll see. Sophie turned to Evelyn. He says we'll see when he means yes, but doesn't want to promise yet. It's his parent thing. Evelyn was falling a little bit in love with this child. Good to know. The food arrived, and Sophie immediately began constructing the perfect bite of pancakes, syrup, and whipped cream. She ate with single-minded focus, occasionally looking up to offer Evelyn facts about Stegosaurus plates or Triceratops horns. Lucas watched his daughter with visible affection, occasionally catching Evelyn's eye with apologetic smiles. After dinner, Sophie dragged them to the jukebox in the corner. She fed in quarters and selected something upbeat and vaguely country. Then she grabbed both their hands. We have to dance. It's tradition. Dad and I always dance after pancakes. Sophie, I don't think... But Evelyn was already standing. I'd love to dance. Sophie positioned them in a small circle and began spinning, singing along to words she clearly knew by heart. Lucas joined in, picking up his daughter and twirling her while she shrieked with laughter. Other diners smiled at them. Evelyn stood awkwardly at first, unsure how to participate in this family ritual. Then Sophie reached for her hand and pulled her into the circle, and suddenly she was spinning too, laughing too, part of something warm and alive and completely foreign to everything she'd built her life around. When the song ended, Sophie hugged Evelyn's waist without warning. I'm glad Dad really likes you. He's been sad for a long time, but tonight he's happy. Evelyn's throat closed. She looked at Lucas over Sophie's head and saw her own emotions reflected back. Hope mixed with terror, joy shadowed by the fear of losing it. I'm glad too, Evelyn managed. They walked out to the parking lot together, Sophie between them, holding both their hands and skipping. The evening was cool and clear, the earlier rain just a memory. I should get her home, Lucas said reluctantly. School tomorrow. Of course. But I'd like to see you again, soon. Tomorrow? I work tomorrow night. Right, the job, the reality waiting under all of this. Then Tuesday, Evelyn suggested. Tuesday works. Sophie looked between them. Are you going to kiss goodbye? Grandma says grown-ups who really like each other always kiss goodbye. Grandma talks too much, Lucas muttered, but he leaned in and kissed Evelyn softly while Sophie giggled. It was chaste and quick and somehow more intimate than anything that had happened in her penthouse. Good night, Evelyn, Sophie said seriously. Thank you for learning about dinosaurs with me. Thank you for teaching me. Evelyn watched them drive away in a beat-up pickup truck that looked older than Sophie. She stood alone in the parking lot of a diner she'd never been to, wearing jeans and a sweater, feeling more herself than she had in years. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Sophie says you passed the test. High praise from a tough critic. Evelyn smiled and replied, What test? The important one. She decided you're worth my time. Is that what you think too? The response came quickly. I decided that the moment you asked me to pretend for 7 minutes, everything since has just been confirmation. Evelyn held her phone and let herself feel it. The joy, the terror, the dangerous hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something real. She drove home to her empty penthouse and didn't feel quite so alone. Tuesday came too slowly and too fast at the same time. Evelyn spent Monday in back-to-back meetings, her mind only half present. She caught herself checking her phone for texts from Lucas, smiling at photos Sophie had asked him to send. A drawing of a brachiosaurus labeled for Evelyn, the spelling charmingly wrong. She'd never been someone's Evelyn before. Never been drawn into a child's world with such casual acceptance. By Tuesday afternoon, her assistant noticed something was different. "You're distracted," Marcus said, setting down her afternoon schedule. "You smiled at Jenkins during the budget review. You never smile at Jenkins." Maybe Jenkins said something amusing. Jenkins talked about depreciation schedules for 40 minutes. There was nothing amusing about it. Marcus studied her with knowing eyes. "You met someone." "That's not... You absolutely met someone. Is it the mystery man from the gala?" Diane's been asking questions. Evelyn's stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" "Background check kind of questions. She's worried. Says you brought a complete unknown to the biggest networking event of the season, and now you're acting like a teenager with a crush." Marcus softened. "She cares about you. We all do. Just wants to make sure you're not being taken advantage of." "I'm not." "Then who is he?" Evelyn wanted to tell the truth. Wanted to say that Lucas was a janitor who worked the night shift, a widower raising his daughter alone, a man who made pancakes and knew every word to Hamilton and looked at her like she was someone worth knowing instead of someone worth using. But she could already imagine Diane's reaction. The concern that would curdle into suspicion. The immediate assumption that Lucas was after her money, her connections, her power. The pressure to end it before it began. "He's someone I trust," Evelyn said carefully. "That's all you need to know right now." Marcus didn't look convinced, but he nodded. "Just be careful. The higher you climb, the more people want to see you fall. And relationships are the easiest way to push someone off balance." After he left, Evelyn sat alone in her office and wondered if she was being naive. She'd built her entire career on careful vetting, strategic relationships, never letting anyone close enough to hurt her. Now she was planning a second date with a man whose background she hadn't checked, whose full story she didn't know, whose presence in her life could become a liability if the wrong people found out. But when her phone buzzed with a text from Lucas, "Sophie wants to know if you like pizza." Very important question, apparently. All the logical concerns evaporated. "Tell Sophie I love pizza," she replied. "Good, because we're cooking tonight." Her idea. She's very excited to show off her pizza-making skills. Fair warning, she's liberal with the toppings. "Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself. And maybe low expectations for what constitutes proper pizza." Evelyn left work at 5, which caused visible shock among her team. She drove to the address Lucas had sent. A modest apartment complex in Greenwood, nothing like the glass tower where she lived. The building was older, well-maintained but worn. Bikes chained to the railings, children's chalk drawings on the sidewalk. This was Lucas's world, small and real and built on a janitor's salary and love for his daughter. Evelyn climbed the stairs to Unit 2B, suddenly nervous. This wasn't neutral territory like the diner. This was their home, the space they'd created together after unimaginable loss. She was being invited into something sacred. She knocked. Immediately heard Sophie's voice. "She's here! Dad, Evelyn's here!" The door opened. Lucas stood there in jeans and a t-shirt that had seen better days, flour dusting his hands, and he smiled at her like she was the best thing he'd seen all day. "Hi," he said. "Hi, babe. You came. You invited me." "I did. But part of me worried you'd realize this was crazy and change your mind." Before Evelyn could respond, Sophie appeared, already covered in flour and tomato sauce. "Evelyn, come see. I'm making a dinosaur pizza. Pepperoni stegosaurus." Evelyn let herself be pulled inside. The apartment was small, living room and kitchen combined, probably 2 bedrooms down the hall. But it was warm, lived in. Sophie's drawings covered the refrigerator. Books overflowed from shelves. A worn couch held mismatched pillows and a blanket that looked hand-knitted. It was the opposite of Evelyn's penthouse in every way, and somehow more welcoming than anywhere she'd been in years. "Okay," Sophie said seriously, leading her to the kitchen counter where dough and toppings were spread out. "The trick is you have to plan your design before you start. Otherwise the pepperoni doesn't look like plates, and then it's just a regular pizza, which is boring." "Huh? That makes sense," Evelyn said, utterly charmed. Lucas handed her an apron. "Welcome to Tuesday Night Chaos. Sophie's been planning this menu since yesterday. I'm just here to make sure nothing catches fire." The oven caught fire one time, Sophie said, and it was a small fire. It was not a small fire, it was a concerning fire that required the smoke alarm and a fire extinguisher. But we fixed it, and now we're more careful. Sophie pushed dough toward Evelyn. You make your own pizza. What shape do you want? Evelyn looked at the lump of dough, completely out of her depth. I don't think I can make shapes. Sure you can. Just use your hands. Mush it into what you want. For the next hour, Evelyn learned that making pizza with a 7-year-old was less about culinary achievement and more about creative chaos. Sophie narrated every decision, offered constant advice, and liberally applied cheese to everything, including herself. Lucas moved between them with easy competence, helping when needed, laughing when Sophie declared his pizza looked sad and shapeless. It's rustic, Lucas protested. It's a blob, Sophie said mercilessly. Evelyn's attempt at a circle ended up vaguely heart-shaped. Sophie declared it romantic, like in movies, and added extra pepperoni hearts on top. While the pizza's baked, Sophie showed Evelyn her fossil collection, rocks she'd found at the beach, and convinced herself were ancient artifacts. Each one had a handwritten label with elaborate scientific names Sophie had invented. This one is Sophiesaurus rex, she explained, because I found it and it's the best one. Very official, Evelyn said seriously. Dad says I can be a paleontologist when I grow up if I study hard and believe in myself. But also he says I can be anything, even president. Your dad is right. Sophie looked up at her with those bright, intelligent eyes. Do you believe in yourself? The question caught Evelyn off guard. Yes, I think so. Good. Because Dad likes you, and I only want him to like people who believe in themselves. People who don't believe in themselves are sad and make other people sad. Lucas appeared in the doorway. Sophie, that's enough interrogation. I'm not interrogating, I'm having a conversation. Sophie returned to her fossils. Evelyn understands. Over dinner, misshapen pizzas that somehow tasted perfect, Sophie talked about her day at school. She'd gotten a gold star in math. Her friend Emma had brought cookies for snack time. Someone named Tyler had said dinosaurs were stupid, and Sophie had corrected him with facts until he apologized. You can't just tell people they're wrong, Lucas said gently, even when they are wrong. But he was wrong. Dinosaurs aren't stupid. They were apex predators who dominated Earth for millions of years. I know, sweetheart, but maybe next time lead with education instead of correction. Sophie considered this. So I should teach him why he's wrong instead of just saying he's wrong? Exactly. That's what Evelyn does. Sophie turned to her. You said your job was boring sometimes, but you still do it because you're teaching people how to communicate better. That's education. Evelyn blinked. She'd never thought of her work that way. I suppose it is. See, Dad, education works. After dinner, Sophie insisted they watch a documentary about the Cretaceous period. Evelyn sat on the couch between Lucas and Sophie, warmth on both sides, learning more about pterosaurs than she'd ever imagined needing to know. Halfway through, Sophie fell asleep against Evelyn's shoulder. Lucas looked over and smiled. She likes you. That's not common. Sophie's friendly but particular about who she trusts. She's wonderful. She is, but she's also 7 and sometimes forgets boundaries. He carefully lifted Sophie. Let me put her to bed. I'll be right back. Evelyn sat alone in the quiet apartment, listening to Lucas's low voice reading a bedtime story in the other room. This was his life. Not board meetings and charity galas, not power plays and strategic partnerships, just a father and daughter, pancakes and pizza, and dinosaur documentaries. It was beautiful and terrifying, and everything Evelyn had convinced herself she didn't need. Lucas returned, closing Sophie's door softly. Sorry, she usually makes it until 8:30 at least. Don't apologize, this was perfect. He sat beside her on the couch, close enough that their knees touched. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why me? And before you say it's because I was there at midnight, I want the real answer. You could have hired anyone, could have brought a business associate or a friend. Why did you take a chance on a janitor you didn't know? Evelyn was quiet, searching for truth. Because everyone else in my life wants something from me. Power, money, connections, access. Even the people who claim to care about me have agendas. She met his eyes. But you were working, doing your job. You didn't even know who I was when I asked. And when I explained, you set conditions, demanded protection for your daughter. You treated it like a transaction with boundaries, not an opportunity to exploit. So you trusted me because I acted like a professional? I trusted you because you acted like a father first. She took his hand. And then you stayed. Not because I paid you to stay, but because you wanted to. Because 7 minutes became an hour, became a night of talking until 3 a.m. Because you kissed me, and it felt real. Lucas lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles. It was real. Is real. Terrifyingly real. I don't know how to do this, Evelyn admitted. How to be with someone. How to let you see the parts of me that aren't polished and perfect. I've already seen those parts. Saw them when you were panicking over an espresso machine. When you showed up to a diner in jeans looking nervous. When you let Sophie cover you in flour and draw you dinosaur pictures. He pulled her closer. Those are the parts I like best. But you don't know everything. About my work, my world, the pressure and expectations. About the people who'll judge you for being with me. About what it costs to be close to someone like me. Then tell me. Help me understand. So she did. Sitting on his worn couch in the apartment he could barely afford, Evelyn told him about the weight of building Crosstech, about being a woman in tech when the industry didn't want women, about the hostile takeover attempts, the sexist investors, the constant battle to be taken seriously, about the loneliness of success, the way every friendship felt transactional, how she'd learned to trust no one because vulnerability was weakness and weakness was death. Diane, my CFO, she's already asking questions about you, Evelyn said, running background checks, looking for anything that could be used against me. And when she finds out what you really do, what I really do, I'm a janitor, Evelyn. I clean offices and empty trash cans and scrub toilets so I can support my daughter. I know that, but Diane will see it differently. She'll assume you're after my money, that you're using me. Lucas pulled back, hurt flickering across his face. And what do you think? I think you're the first honest person I've met in 15 years. But I'm terrified that my world will destroy this before it has a chance to become something real. That the scrutiny and judgment and constant pressure will make you realize I'm not worth the cost. Evelyn. Lucas cupped her face in his hands, making her look at him. I lost my wife 3 years ago. Spent every day since then just trying to survive. To be enough for Sophie. To make it through another shift, another day, another bedtime story without breaking. His voice roughened. And then you walked into my life and asked me to pretend for 7 minutes. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt something other than grief. I felt hope. Lucas, let me finish. You think your world will destroy this? I'm already living in the wreckage of my world. I've already lost everything. There's nothing left to take from me except Sophie, and I'd burn everything down before I let anyone hurt her. He kissed her softly. So bring on the scrutiny, the judgment, the CFO who thinks I'm not good enough. I've survived worse. We'll survive this. Evelyn kissed him back, desperate and grateful and so far gone, she couldn't remember why she'd tried to keep her distance. His arms came around her, pulling her into his lap, and she went willingly, let herself be held by someone who knew what loss tasted like and chose hope anyway. They stayed like that, wrapped together on the couch, while the apartment settled into nighttime quiet around them. Outside, traffic hummed. Inside, everything was still. Stay, Lucas whispered against her hair. I can't. Sophie is asleep. I'm not asking you to stay forever. Just tonight. Just a few more hours. He pulled back to look at her. I'll drive you home before dawn. Before she wakes up, I just want to hold you a little longer. Evelyn should have said no, should have been responsible, appropriate, careful, should have remembered all the reasons why this was moving too fast, getting too complicated, threatening everything she'd built. She stayed. They moved to Lucas's room, which was even smaller than she expected. A queen bed, worn dresser, photos of Sophie at various ages covering every surface. This was where he slept after his night shifts, probably exhausted and dreamless. Tonight they lay together fully clothed, talking in whispers like teenagers afraid of being caught. Lucas told her about Laura, how they'd met in college, How she'd been brilliant and kind and made him believe in possibilities he'd never considered. How her death had shattered him so completely, he'd almost forgotten how to be human. Evelyn talked about the early days of Crosstech, the 100 rejections before someone finally took a chance on her vision. The first major contract, the moment she realized she'd actually succeeded, and the creeping realization that success didn't fill the emptiness. I thought if I built something important enough, achieved something remarkable enough, I'd finally feel complete, she said. But the more I accomplished, the more isolated I became. Like I was climbing a mountain, and every step took me further from everyone else. So come back down, Lucas said simply. Stop climbing. Stay here with the rest of us mortals. It's not that simple, isn't it? You're brilliant, Evelyn. You could do anything, be anything. What if you chose to be happy instead of successful? What if I don't know the difference anymore? He kissed her forehead. Then I'll teach you. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, her head on his chest where she could hear his heartbeat. Evelyn dreamed of nothing for the first time in years. Her phone woke her at 4 a.m., an alarm she'd forgotten to silence. Lucas stirred beside her, groggy. I should go, she whispered. Not yet. 5 more minutes. That's what you said about 7 minutes at the gala. And look how well that turned out. She smiled despite everything. Lucas, I have a board meeting at 8. I need to go home, shower, change. I know, but he held her tighter. Just stay a little longer, please. So she did. 5 minutes stretched to 10, then 20. They didn't talk, just held each other in the pre-dawn darkness while the city began to wake outside. Finally, Evelyn forced herself to move. Lucas drove her home in his beat-up truck, both of them quiet. When they pulled up to her building, he didn't immediately let her go. Tonight was perfect, he said. It was. Can I see you again this weekend? Yes, absolutely yes. Bring comfortable clothes. Sophie wants to take you to the aquarium. The aquarium? She's very excited about the octopus exhibit. Apparently octopuses are related to ancient cephalopods, and she has theories. He smiled. Fair warning, the theories are extensive. Evelyn laughed. I can't wait. She kissed him goodbye in the truck's cab, surrounded by Sophie's car seat and dinosaur toys and all the beautiful chaos of their life. Then she climbed out and watched him drive away, already counting the hours until Saturday. The doorman gave her a knowing look as she entered the lobby. Good evening, Miss Cross, or should I say good morning? Good morning, James. You look happy. I am. It's good to see. You work too hard. Evelyn rode the elevator to her penthouse, still wearing yesterday's clothes, flour in her hair from Sophie's enthusiastic pizza making, her heart full of things she couldn't name. She had 3 hours before her board meeting, just enough time to shower, change, and transform back into the CEO the world expected her to be. But for these few hours, she let herself be just Evelyn, misspelled and imperfect and loved by a 7-year-old girl who believed in dinosaurs and people who believed in themselves. The weekend came. Evelyn met Lucas and Sophie at the aquarium on Saturday morning, and Sophie immediately launched into excited explanations about every creature they encountered. The octopus exhibit did indeed inspire extensive theories about ancient cephalopods and evolutionary advantages of having 8 arms. Imagine if people had 8 arms, Sophie said seriously. We could do so much more. I could draw and eat and play and read all at the same time. You'd still need to sleep, Lucas pointed out. Sleep is inefficient. Dolphins sleep with half their brain. Humans should learn that. They moved through the exhibits, Sophie providing constant narration. Lucas took Evelyn's hand casually, naturally, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. Other families moved around them, children pressed against glass, parents checking phones, couples arguing about lunch plans. Evelyn tried to remember the last time she'd been to a place like this. Maybe never. Her childhood had been consumed by her mother's illness and her father's grief. Her adulthood had been consumed by ambition. You're thinking too hard, Lucas said quietly. I can see it on your face. Sorry, just trying to be present. Then be present. Stop analyzing and just experience. Sophie ran ahead to the shark tank, practically vibrating with excitement. Lucas pulled Evelyn close and kissed her temple. Thank you for being here, he said. Thank you for inviting me. Sophie woke me up at 6 this morning asking if you were definitely coming. She planned our entire route through the aquarium to maximize educational value. She's remarkable. She is, and she thinks you're remarkable too, which is high praise. He squeezed her hand. I know this is fast, maybe too fast, but watching you with her, seeing how patient you are with her questions and enthusiasm, it makes me think maybe we're not crazy for trying this. We're definitely crazy. Good crazy or bad crazy? I don't know yet. Ask me in a few months when reality catches up. But reality was already catching up. Evelyn's phone had been buzzing all morning with messages from Diane. Urgent. Need to talk. Call me ASAP. She'd been ignoring them, trying to protect this small pocket of normalcy. At lunch, the aquarium cafe, where Sophie insisted on fish-shaped nuggets despite Lucas's protests, Evelyn finally checked her messages. Diane's text was blunt. I know who he is. We need to talk. Now. Evelyn's stomach dropped. She looked up at Lucas, who was helping Sophie open a packet of ketchup, completely unaware that their carefully constructed bubble was about to burst. Everything okay? He asked, noticing her expression. I need to make a call. I'll be right back. She stepped outside, found a quiet corner, and called Diane. Finally, Diane answered. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I'm at the aquarium with Lucas and his daughter. Lucas Reed, born in Portland, moved to Seattle 6 years ago with his wife Laura, graduated from MIT with a degree in computer engineering, worked for Microsoft for 4 years before his wife died, and he quit to raise his daughter alone. Currently employed as a night janitor at Meridian Tower, making $32,000 a year. Evelyn's world tilted. MIT? Microsoft? Full ride scholarship. Graduated top of his class, was being groomed for senior engineering roles before Laura's accident. He walked away from everything. Diane's voice was sharp. Why is a former Microsoft engineer working as a janitor and dating you, Evelyn? Because he's raising his daughter. Or because he recognized an opportunity when he saw one. You offered him $10,000 for 7 minutes. Maybe he saw a bigger payday. You're wrong. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a very convenient meet-cute. The brilliant engineer forced into janitorial work, the lonely CEO looking for connection, it's almost too perfect. Diane, Richard Castellano is asking questions. He heard about Lucas from someone at the gala. Now he's digging, looking for leverage. If he finds out Lucas used to work in tech, he'll spin it into corporate espionage. He'll say Lucas infiltrated Crosstech to steal proprietary information. Evelyn closed her eyes. That's insane. It's strategic, and it works. Unless you can prove beyond doubt that Lucas is exactly who he says he is and wants nothing from you except genuine connection. Diane softened slightly. I'm not saying he's lying. I'm saying you need to be careful. Verify before you trust. I've already trusted him. Then make sure that trust isn't misplaced, for everyone's sake. The call ended. Evelyn stood alone outside the aquarium, watching families come and go, feeling the weight of her world crushing down on the fragile things she'd been building with Lucas. He'd lied to her, or at least concealed the truth. He wasn't just a janitor struggling to survive. He was a brilliant engineer who'd walked away from a career that would have made him wealthy and respected. The kind of person who could absolutely be playing a long game, waiting for the right moment to leverage his connection to her. But she'd seen him with Sophie, heard the grief in his voice when he talked about Laura, felt the honesty in every kiss, every conversation, every moment they'd shared. Diane was wrong. She had to be wrong. Evelyn walked back inside. Lucas and Sophie were at the gift shop, examining stuffed octopuses. Sophie was lobbying hard for the giant one, while Lucas was trying to negotiate down to medium-sized. He looked up when Evelyn approached, and his smile faltered. What's wrong? We need to talk. His expression shuddered immediately. Sophie, stay here and pick out an octopus. Any size, I'll be right back. They moved to a quiet corner. Lucas crossed his arms defensively, already knowing this conversation wouldn't be good. Why didn't you tell me you went to MIT? Evelyn asked quietly. He went very still. How did you? My CFO ran a background check. Found out you graduated from MIT. Worked at Microsoft. Had an engineering career you walked away from. She searched his face. Why didn't you tell me? Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Because that's not who I am anymore. It's who you were. And I left that person behind when Laura died. When I realized that career success meant nothing if I couldn't be there for Sophie. He met her eyes. I didn't tell you because it doesn't matter. I'm a janitor now. That's my life. It matters because I thought you were someone else. Someone who needed the money I offered, not someone who could have walked back into tech anytime and made 10 times what I paid you. Is that what you think? That I came back for more money? His voice hardened. That I'm playing some long game, waiting to exploit your success? I don't know what to think. You lied. I didn't lie. I just didn't volunteer my entire biography in the first 5 minutes. Lucas ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. Yes, I went to MIT. Yes, I worked at Microsoft. Yes, I had a promising career. And then my wife died and everything that mattered before suddenly didn't matter at all. I couldn't sit in an office for 12 hours a day while my 4-year-old daughter grieved. I couldn't pretend code reviews were important when Sophie was having nightmares and asking why mommy wasn't coming home. So you became a janitor. So I became a father. The job is irrelevant. The work is irrelevant. Sophie is everything. He stepped closer. I took your offer because we needed the money, yes, but I stayed because I wanted to, because you made me feel something I thought I'd never feel again. And I'm here now at an aquarium on a Saturday because my daughter thinks you're wonderful, and I'm falling for you so hard it terrifies me. Evelyn's chest ached. My CFO thinks you're using me. And what do you think? I think I want to believe you, but everyone in my life is telling me to be careful, that this is too fast, too convenient, too perfect to be real. Then don't believe me. Believe what you've seen, what you've felt. Lucas's voice was raw. I've been honest with you about everything that matters. My daughter, my grief, my life. If you can't trust that, if you need me to prove myself beyond just being who I am, then maybe everyone's right. Maybe this is moving too fast. Sophie appeared around the corner, clutching a medium-sized octopus. I picked this one because it's not too big and not too small, and it's purple, which is my favorite color right now. She looked between them, sensing tension. Are you fighting? No, sweetheart, Lucas said gently, just having an adult conversation. About what? About trust, Evelyn said quietly. And whether people are who they say they are. Sophie considered this with her characteristic seriousness. Dad says you should always give people a chance to be honest before you decide they're lying. He says sometimes people keep secrets because they're scared, not because they're bad. Lucas closed his eyes briefly. Sophie, it's true. You said that when I didn't tell you about getting in trouble at school because I was scared you'd be mad. But you weren't mad. You just helped me fix it. She looked at Evelyn. Are you scared Dad's lying about something? No, I'm scared I'm making a mistake. Oh, that's different. Sophie hugged her octopus. Dad makes mistakes all the time. Last week he put salt in the pancakes instead of sugar, and they were terrible. But we laughed about it and made new ones. Mistakes are fixable if people want to fix them. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds came wisdom Evelyn had forgotten existed. She looked at Lucas, seeing him clearly now. Not a janitor, not an engineer, just a man trying to build a life from the wreckage of his old one. A father putting his daughter first. Someone who understood loss and chose to hope anyway. I'm sorry, she said. I let other people's voices get louder than my own instincts. Your instincts told you to trust me? From the moment you set conditions to protect Sophie, from the first time you made me pancakes in my kitchen, from every honest conversation we've had since. She took his hand. I'm scared, Lucas. Terrified that I'm letting someone in who'll hurt me. But I'm more scared of pushing away something real because I'm too afraid to be vulnerable. Lucas pulled her close, right there in the aquarium, with Sophie watching and families passing by. I won't hurt you, can't promise I won't make mistakes or frustrate you or occasionally burn the pancakes, but I won't hurt you deliberately. Won't use you. Won't be anything other than exactly who I am. A janitor with an MIT degree. A dad with a complicated past who's trying to build a better future. Evelyn kissed him, soft and certain. Behind them, Sophie made exaggerated gagging noises. Gross. You're doing the kissing thing again. They broke apart, laughing. Lucas ruffled Sophie's hair. Get used to it, kiddo. I really like Evelyn. I know, you have the same face Mom used to make when she looked at you in old pictures, the sappy face. Something passed between Lucas and Evelyn then, an understanding that they were building something new on the foundation of old grief. That letting someone in didn't mean forgetting what came before, that love could exist in the spaces loss had carved out. They finished the aquarium visit, bought Sophie her purple octopus, and walked out into the afternoon sunlight together. Evelyn's phone was still buzzing with messages from Diane, probably more warnings about trust and verification and protecting herself. She silenced it. Whatever happened next, whatever scrutiny they faced, whatever judgment came from her world meeting his, they'd face it together. Even if it started with 7 minutes and a desperate lie, especially because it had. The illusion held for exactly 3 more weeks. 3 weeks of stolen moments between Evelyn's board meetings and Lucas's night shifts. 3 weeks of Saturday aquarium visits and Tuesday pizza nights. 3 weeks of Sophie's dinosaur lectures and Lucas's gentle touches and Evelyn learning what it felt like to be part of something bigger than herself. 3 weeks of pretending that 2 worlds moving at different speeds could somehow sync up without collision. The crash came on a Monday morning when Evelyn walked into Crosstech headquarters and found Diane waiting in her office with a tablet and an expression that promised nothing good. "Richard Castellano is making his move," Diane said without preamble. "He's calling for a vote of no confidence. Board meeting, Thursday at 10, and he's using Lucas as ammunition." Evelyn's blood went cold. "What are you talking about?" Diane tapped the tablet. An article from a tech gossip blog filled the screen. The headline read, "Crosstech CEO's Mystery Man, Corporate Spy or Convenient Romance." The photos were devastating. Lucas at the gala in his borrowed suit looking handsome and out of place. Lucas and Evelyn at the diner, hands clasped across the table. Lucas with Sophie at the aquarium, Evelyn crouched beside them examining a starfish. Someone had been following them, documenting them. "Who did this?" Evelyn's voice was barely controlled. "Does it matter? What matters is the narrative Richard's building. Former Microsoft engineer mysteriously working as a janitor at your building, gains access to your private spaces, your trust, your company. Richard spinning it as corporate espionage. Says you're compromised, that Lucas could be feeding information to competitors. That's insane. Lucas quit tech years ago to raise his daughter. Can you prove that? Can you prove he's not still connected to people at Microsoft? That he hasn't been approached by competitors looking for inside information?" Diane's expression was sympathetic but firm. "I know you care about him, but Richard only needs to create reasonable doubt. The board is already nervous about quarterly projections. Add a potential security breach and they'll vote you out just to be safe." Evelyn sank into her chair. This was what she'd feared from the beginning. Her world consuming something good, destroying it through suspicion and strategy and the ruthless calculation of people like Richard Castellano. "What are my options?" she asked quietly. "Cut ties with Lucas? Publicly. Make a statement that it was a brief relationship that didn't work out. Distance yourself completely before Thursday." Diane paused. "Or fight. Produce evidence that Lucas is exactly who he says he is. Prove the relationship is genuine and that there's no security risk. But Evelyn, that's going to require invasive vetting, background checks, interviews, financial audits. You'll have to expose every part of his life to scrutiny. He'll never agree to that. Then you're choosing him over Crosstech." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. 15 years of work, billions of dollars in value, 4,000 employees depending on her leadership, everything she'd built, everything she'd sacrificed relationships and normalcy to achieve, against 3 weeks with a man who made her feel human again. "Give me until Wednesday," Evelyn said. "I'll handle this." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." After Diane left, Evelyn sat alone in her office and did something she hadn't done in years. She cried. Not the careful, controlled tears she'd allowed herself after her father's funeral. Real, messy, desperate crying for the impossible choice she was facing. She couldn't ask Lucas to submit to the kind of investigation required to clear his name. Couldn't ask him to let strangers dissect his life, question his motives, probe into Sophie's world. That wasn't fair. That wasn't love. But she couldn't walk away either. Couldn't go back to the hollow existence she'd been living before 7 minutes at midnight changed everything. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Sophie wants to know if you're coming over tonight. I told her you're probably busy, but she's very persuasive. Evelyn stared at the message. She should cancel, should start building distance before things got worse, should protect him from what was coming. Instead, she texted back, I'll be there at 6. When she arrived at the apartment that evening, Sophie was waiting at the door with a poster board covered in glitter and dinosaur stickers. I made you a welcome sign, Sophie announced proudly, because Dad says you're coming over a lot now, and that means you're important to our family. Evelyn's heart cracked. It's beautiful, Sophie. I know. I worked really hard on it. The Triceratops took forever because I wanted the horns perfect. She grabbed Evelyn's hand. Come see. I reorganized my fossil collection by geological period. It's way better now. Lucas stood in the kitchen doorway, smiling at his daughter's enthusiasm. But when he looked at Evelyn, the smile faded. What's wrong? He asked quietly. Nothing, just a long day. Evelyn, later. Let me have this evening first. So she did. She let Sophie show her the reorganized fossils, each one now labeled with elaborate descriptions of what time period they supposedly came from. She helped make dinner, tacos, which Sophie insisted required architectural precision in their construction. She sat through another dinosaur documentary, this time about the extinction event that ended the Cretaceous period. 65 million years ago, Sophie narrated along with the documentary, an asteroid hit Earth and everything changed. The dinosaurs couldn't adapt fast enough. Only the ones who could fly survived and became birds. That's sad, Evelyn said. All those amazing creatures just gone. But the birds survived, and now we have eagles and penguins and chickens. Which is weird because chickens are basically tiny dinosaurs, but we eat them. Sophie considered this. Evolution is complicated. It is, Lucas agreed. Change is always complicated. Sometimes what looks like an ending is actually just a transformation. He was looking at Evelyn when he said it, and she knew he sensed something was coming, something that would require transformation or extinction. After Sophie went to bed, they sat on the couch in the quiet apartment. Lucas took Evelyn's hand and waited for her to speak. Richard Castellano is using us against me, she said finally. He's calling for a vote of no confidence on Thursday. Says our relationship is a security risk, that you might be corporate espionage. Lucas's jaw tightened. That's ridiculous. I know, but ridiculous doesn't matter. Perception matters. And the perception is that I brought an unknown person into my life very quickly. Someone who used to work in tech and now has access to me, my home, my company. So what do they want? For me to prove I'm not a spy? They want you to submit to background checks, financial audits, interviews. They want to investigate every part of your life to verify you're not a threat. She met his eyes. Or they want me to end this. Walk away, make a public statement that it was a mistake, and distance myself completely. Lucas pulled his hand away. Those are my options? Submit to interrogation or lose you? I'm not saying those are your only options, but they are, aren't they? Because if I refuse the investigation, you look guilty. And if I agree to it, they'll tear apart my life looking for something suspicious. They'll question Sophie's school, interview my mother-in-law, examine every financial transaction I've made since Laura died. His voice was rising. They'll turn our lives inside out trying to find evidence of something that doesn't exist. I know. That's why I can't ask you to do it. Then what are you asking? Evelyn felt tears threatening again. I don't know. I just know I'm not ready to lose you. Not when we're just starting to figure out what this could be. Lucas stood and paced across the small living room. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Your world doesn't make space for people like me. It only knows how to consume or destroy. That's not fair, isn't it? 3 weeks ago, I was invisible. A janitor no one noticed. Then I spent 7 minutes standing next to you, and suddenly I'm a security threat? Suddenly my entire life is suspect because I dared to care about someone out of my league? You're not out of your league. Don't say that. Then what am I? Because from where I'm standing, I'm a liability. Someone who threatens everything you've built. And the smart play, the strategic play, is for you to cut your losses and move on. I don't want to move on. But you might have to. Lucas turned to face her. That's what you came here to say, isn't it? That you can't choose me over Crosstech. That 15 years of work matters more than 3 weeks of happiness. Don't make it sound like I'm choosing money over love. Aren't you? The words hit like a physical blow. Evelyn stood, anger rising to meet his. You think this is easy for me? You think I want to make this choice? I'm trying to figure out how to keep both. How to protect you and Sophie from scrutiny while also protecting the company I built from the ground up. By asking me to prove I'm worthy of you, by making me submit to investigation like a criminal. That's not what I'm asking. Then what are you asking? Lucas's voice cracked. Because it sounds like you're asking me to let strangers dissect my life, or to walk away and let you face this alone. Either way, I lose. Evelyn opened her mouth to respond, but Sophie's voice cut through from the hallway. Why are you yelling? They both turned. Sophie stood in her pajamas, clutching her purple octopus, eyes wide and frightened. Lucas immediately softened. Sorry, sweetheart. We didn't mean to wake you. Are you fighting about me? Sophie's voice was small. Is Evelyn leaving because of me? No, Evelyn said quickly. Sophie, no, this has nothing to do with you. Then why are you sad? You both look sad and angry and like you're saying goodbye. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I don't want you to go. You're supposed to stay. You're supposed to be part of our family now. Lucas knelt in front of his daughter. Sophie, sometimes grown-ups have complicated problems that don't have easy solutions. Evelyn and I are trying to figure something out, but it's not your fault. It's never your fault. But if she leaves, we'll be alone again, like before, just us. Sophie looked at Evelyn. Don't you want to stay with us? More than anything, Evelyn said, her voice breaking, but wanting something isn't always enough. Why not? Dad says if you want something enough and work hard enough, you can make it happen. He says that's how you became so successful. You wanted it and worked for it. Sophie's logic was devastating in its simplicity. So want this. Want us. Work for it. Lucas picked up his daughter. Let me put you back to bed, okay? Then Evelyn and I will finish talking. Promise you won't make her leave while I'm sleeping? I promise. After Lucas carried Sophie back to her room, Evelyn stood in the living room feeling like the walls were closing in. She heard his gentle voice reading another bedtime story, heard Sophie's questions about whether things would be okay, heard his reassurances that sounded hollow even to her. When he returned, his expression was carefully neutral. She's scared. She's already lost her mother. Now she thinks she's losing you too. Lucas, don't. Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't tell me we'll figure it out when we both know the math doesn't work. He sat on the couch, suddenly looking exhausted. You have a board meeting Thursday. Richard Castellano is weaponizing our relationship, and I can't let Sophie be dragged into whatever investigation would be required to clear my name. So what do we do? You tell me. You're the brilliant CEO, the one who builds companies and testifies before Congress and solves impossible problems. What's your solution? Evelyn heard the bitterness under his words and couldn't blame him. She'd brought this chaos into his carefully constructed life. She'd offered him 7 minutes and then stayed for weeks, letting him hope for something that maybe was never sustainable. I could fight, she said quietly. Could tell the board that my personal life is none of their business, that Richard is manufacturing a crisis to grab power. And if they vote you out anyway, then I lose Crosstech. 15 years of work gone because I refused to sacrifice you. That's not a choice, that's martyrdom. Lucas looked at her. I won't let you destroy everything you've built for me. That's not love. That's self-destruction. Then what is love? Letting you go because it's safer, protecting my company instead of fighting for us? Maybe love is recognizing when two worlds can't merge without destroying both. His voice was gentle but final. You belong in boardrooms and galas and buildings with your name on them. I belong here, raising my daughter, making pancakes, living a small life that doesn't threaten anyone's empire. I don't want a life without you in it, and I don't want to be the reason you lose everything you worked for. Lucas stood and pulled her into his arms. But Sophie comes first, always. And if staying with you means she gets caught in corporate warfare, investigated by strangers, exposed to scrutiny she doesn't deserve, I can't do that to her. Evelyn held him tight, breathing in the scent of him, memorizing the feeling of his arms around her. So this is it? 3 weeks, and then goodbye? 3 weeks of being happier than I've been in 3 years. 3 weeks of Sophie laughing more, of me remembering how to hope, of feeling like maybe the world wasn't just grief and survival. He pulled back to look at her. You gave me that. Even if it ends now, you gave me that. I don't want it to end. Neither do I. But wanting isn't enough. They stood like that, wrapped together in his small apartment while the city hummed outside and Sophie slept down the hall, and Evelyn felt something inside her breaking. Not clean, not quick, a slow shattering that would leave pieces she'd never find. I should go, she said finally. Stay. One more night. Let me hold you one more time before everything gets complicated. So she stayed. They lay together in his bed, fully clothed again like that first night, and talked until dawn. About what might have been if they'd met differently. If she was just a programmer and he was just an engineer. If Sophie had a mother and Evelyn had never learned to be alone. But hypotheticals didn't change reality. At 6 a.m., Evelyn kissed Lucas goodbye, soft and final, and full of everything they'd never say out loud. Fight for Crosstech, he told her. That company matters. Those 4,000 employees matter. Don't let Richard Castellano take it from you. And us? There is no US if you lose everything to protect me. That's not a foundation. That's a crater. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that love was supposed to conquer obstacles, that if they just tried harder, wanted it enough, worked for it like Sophie said, they could make it work. But she'd learned the hard truth years ago. Some things didn't survive contact with the real world. Some beautiful, fragile things shattered when exposed to pressure. She left without waking Sophie, unable to face another goodbye from the 7-year-old who'd drawn her dinosaurs and believed grown-ups could fix anything if they wanted to. The next 2 days blurred. Evelyn met with lawyers, prepared her defense, built a case for why her personal life shouldn't impact her professional capabilities. Diane worked beside her, never saying "I told you so," but thinking it loud enough that Evelyn heard it anyway. Wednesday evening, Marcus found her still in her office at 9 p.m., staring at notes she'd read 100 times. You should go home, he said gently. Get some sleep before tomorrow. I can't sleep. Then at least eat something. You've been running on coffee for 2 days. I'm fine. You're not fine. You look like you're grieving. Marcus sat across from her. What happened with Lucas? We ended it. He's protecting his daughter. I'm protecting my company. Very mature, very rational decision. That doesn't make it hurt less. No, Evelyn admitted. It doesn't. Do you love him? The question caught her off guard. Did she love him? After 3 weeks? After scattered dates and pizza nights and aquarium visits? I don't know, she said honestly. I know I felt more like myself with him than I have in years. I know his daughter made me laugh in ways I'd forgotten were possible. I know that walking away feels like cutting off a piece of myself that I'll never get back. That sounds like love. Or it sounds like loneliness and desperation dressed up as connection. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? When I started working for you 5 years ago, you were formidable, brilliant, driven, absolutely unstoppable. But you were also lonely. So lonely it radiated off you like cold. These past few weeks, that changed. You smiled more, laughed at Jenkins's terrible jokes, left work at reasonable hours. He met her eyes. You were happy, actually genuinely happy, and now you're back to being formidable and alone. Formidable and alone built Crosstech. And happy could have sustained it, could have made it mean something beyond just success. You think I should fight for him, risk everything to keep a relationship that's barely started. I think you should ask yourself what you're really fighting for tomorrow. The company? Or the version of yourself that never needs anyone? After Marcus left, Evelyn sat alone in her office and finally let herself consider the question. What was she fighting for? Crosstech had been her life for 15 years. Her purpose, her identity, her proof that she mattered. Losing it would mean losing the fundamental definition of who she was. But Lucas and Sophie had given her something Crosstech never could. A reason to leave work at 6. A place where she was wanted for herself, not for what she could provide. A glimpse of a life where success was measured in shared pancakes and terrible dinosaur puns, and the trust of a 7-year-old who believed in her. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. When she opened it, she found a video. Sophie, sitting on her bed with her purple octopus, speaking directly to the camera. "Hi, Evelyn. Dad doesn't know I'm making this. Grandma helped me use her phone." Sophie's voice was serious. "Dad says you have a big meeting tomorrow, that people are being mean about you and him being friends. I don't understand why grown-ups make everything so complicated." Sophie hugged her octopus. "I just wanted to tell you that I think you're really brave. You run a big company and have lots of people depending on you, and that's scary. But you know what else is brave? Eating pizza with a 7-year-old who talks too much about dinosaurs, and going to the aquarium even though you probably had important work to do, and making my dad smile like he used to when Mom was alive." Tears streamed down Evelyn's face. "So whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know you're still my friend. Even if you can't come over anymore. Even if the mean people win. You'll always be my friend who doesn't know about dinosaurs but tries really hard to learn." Sophie smiled. "Dad says sometimes the bravest thing is knowing when to let go. But I think sometimes the bravest thing is holding on even when it's hard. Bye, Evelyn." The video ended. Evelyn played it again and again. And on the fourth viewing, something crystallized in her mind. She'd spent 15 years building CrossTech, sacrificed relationships, normalcy, happiness for success. And she'd convinced herself that sacrifice was noble, that choosing work over personal life proved her dedication. But what if she'd been wrong? What if the real courage wasn't in sacrificing everything for her company, but in demanding that her company make space for her life? She pulled up her presentation for tomorrow's board meeting. The careful defense she'd prepared, the logical arguments about why her personal life was irrelevant to her professional capabilities. Then she deleted it and started over. At midnight, she was still writing. At 2 a.m., she was rehearsing. At 4 a.m., she finally went home, showered, changed, and arrived back at CrossTech by 7. Diane met her in the lobby. "Please tell me you got some sleep." "Some. Enough." Evelyn handed her a thumb drive. "I rewrote my presentation. Don't look at it until the meeting. Just trust me." "Evelyn, trust me." The boardroom filled at exactly 9:45. 12 board members, Richard Castellano among them, all avoiding eye contact. The tension was thick enough to cut. At 10 a.m., the chairman called the meeting to order. "We're here to address concerns raised by Richard Castellano regarding CEO Evelyn Cross's recent personal relationship and potential security implications for CrossTech. Richard, you have the floor." Richard stood, perfectly composed, and launched into his prepared attack. He presented the blog article, photos of Lucas, a timeline of their relationship. He questioned Evelyn's judgment in getting involved with a former tech worker now employed at their building. He suggested that Lucas could be a corporate spy, that Evelyn was compromised, that the board needed to act decisively to protect shareholder value. It was a masterful performance, reasonable, concerned, devastating. When he finished, the chairman turned to Evelyn. "Ms. Cross, your response?" Evelyn stood. She didn't use the prepared slides, didn't hide behind corporate speak or legal defenses. "3 weeks ago," she said, "I made a desperate decision. I hired someone to pretend to be my partner for 7 minutes at a charity gala because I was terrified of appearing weak, terrified that being alone would be seen as a failure, terrified that Richard Castellano would use my solitude as evidence that I wasn't suited to lead this company." The room was silent. "That man's name is Lucas Reed. He's a janitor who works nights in this building so he can be home during the day with his 7-year-old daughter. He's a widower who walked away from a promising career at Microsoft because being a good father mattered more than being a successful engineer. And yes, I fell for him. Hard and fast, and in a way that terrifies me because I've spent 15 years avoiding exactly this kind of vulnerability." Richard leaned forward. "Ms. Cross, this emotional confession doesn't address the security concerns." "Let me finish." Evelyn's voice was steel. "You want to talk about security? Lucas Reed quit Microsoft 3 years ago after his wife died. He's had no contact with tech companies since. He's not a corporate spy. He's not after my money or my connections. He's a man trying to rebuild his life and raise his daughter in a world that tells him he's not good enough because he chose family over ambition. She pulled out her phone and projected Sophie's video onto the screen. The board watched in silence as the 7-year-old talked about bravery and holding on and dinosaurs. When it ended, Evelyn continued, "That's his daughter. That's what Richard wants me to sacrifice to prove my dedication to this company. A relationship with a good man and his remarkable child because my personal happiness is seen as a professional liability." "Ms. Cross, Chet," the chairman began, "I'm not finished. I built Crosstech from nothing, worked 100-hour weeks, sacrificed relationships and health and any semblance of work-life balance. And I did it because I believed that's what leadership required. Total sacrifice, complete dedication, the company above everything." Evelyn looked around the table. "But I was wrong. A leader who has no life outside work isn't dedicated. They're diminished. They make decisions from a place of isolation rather than wholeness. They build companies that succeed financially but fail to understand what actually matters to people." She took a breath. "Richard is right that I got involved with Lucas quickly, that I made an emotional decision without full vetting. But I'm not apologizing for it, because those 3 weeks taught me more about leadership than 15 years of board meetings ever could. They taught me that making space for personal happiness doesn't make you weak. It makes you human, and humans build better companies than machines." Richard stood. "This is all very touching, but it doesn't change the fact that you introduced an unknown variable into our corporate environment without proper security protocols." "Then change the protocols," Evelyn said. "Make it standard practice to vet any personal relationships that touch the company. Establish clear guidelines about what constitutes a security risk. But don't use my relationship as a weapon to remove a CEO who's delivered 15 years of growth and innovation." She faced the board directly. "Here's what I'm offering. Vote me out if you think Richard can do better. If you believe my personal life compromises my professional capabilities. If you think sacrificing happiness for corporate success is still the right model for leadership. But if you keep me, understand that I'm not the same CEO I was a month ago. I'm not going to work 100 hours a week. I'm not going to miss every important moment in my personal life for another quarterly earnings call. I'm going to lead Crosstech in a way that honors both professional excellence and personal well-being, because our employees deserve a leader who models balance, not burnout." The room was utterly silent. Evelyn sat down, heart hammering, having just bet her entire career on a 7-year-old's wisdom about holding on. The chairman cleared his throat. "Thank you, Ms. Cross. The board will deliberate and vote. Please wait outside." Evelyn left the boardroom. Diane followed. "That was either brilliant or career suicide," Diane said. "I can't tell which. Neither can I." They waited in Evelyn's office. Minutes stretched into an hour. Evelyn stared out at the city and thought about Lucas and Sophie, about whether she'd just fought for something real or thrown away everything for a relationship that had already ended. At noon, Marcus appeared in the doorway. "They're ready." Evelyn walked back into the boardroom. 12 faces, unreadable. The chairman stood. "The board has voted. 8-4 in favor of retaining Evelyn Cross as CEO." Relief crashed through her. Then the chairman continued. "However, this comes with conditions. You'll submit to a formal security review of your personal relationship. Lucas Reed will be interviewed and vetted. If any concerns arise, we reserve the right to revisit this decision." He looked at her seriously. "You've asked us to trust your judgment. Now prove it was warranted." Evelyn nodded, not trusting her voice. Richard Castellano stood. "For the record, I maintain my objections. This sets a dangerous precedent about mixing personal and professional boundaries." "Noted," the chairman said. "This meeting is adjourned." Evelyn made it back to her office before her legs gave out. She'd won. Barely. Conditionally. But she'd won. Now she just had to tell Lucas that winning meant subjecting him to exactly the kind of investigation he'd refused to accept. She didn't call him. Couldn't figure out how to explain over the phone that she'd won by agreeing to the very thing he'd refused. Instead, Evelyn left work at 6, another small rebellion, and drove to his apartment with her heart in her throat. Lucas opened the door looking exhausted. Behind him, she could hear Sophie singing along to something from Hamilton, blissfully unaware of the adult chaos swirling around her. "Evelyn," his voice was flat. "I didn't think I'd see you again. Can we talk?" He hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. Sophie appeared immediately, launching herself at Evelyn with the kind of enthusiasm that made her chest ache. "You're back. I knew you'd come back. Dad said you were really busy, but I knew—" Sophie stopped, looking between them. "Why do you both look sad?" "I need to talk to your dad about grown-up things," Evelyn said gently. "Can you give us a few minutes?" Sophie's expression turned serious. "Okay, but don't make him more sad. He's been really sad since you left." She grabbed her purple octopus and retreated to her room, closing the door with exaggerated care. Lucas crossed his arms. The board meeting was today. How bad was it? "I kept my job. 8-4 vote." Relief flickered across his face, then died. "That's good. That's what matters." "Lucas, you did the right thing, chose the company, chose your employees and your legacy and everything you worked for. I'm glad." He looked away. "You should go now. Clean break is better for everyone." "They want to investigate you," Evelyn said in a rush. "It was the condition for keeping me on. Full background check, interviews, financial review, everything you said you wouldn't do. I fought for us and won, but winning means asking you to do the thing you refused." Lucas was very still. "So you're here to ask me to change my mind?" "I'm here to tell you what happened and let you decide. If you say no, I accept that. I'll tell the board it's over and figure out how to navigate the next few months without giving Richard more ammunition." She took a breath. "But if you say yes, if you're willing to go through this, then we have a chance, a real chance." "At what cost?" "They'll interview Sophie's teachers, question my mother-in-law about whether I'm stable, examine every dollar I've spent since Laura died looking for evidence of something suspicious." His voice rose. "They'll turn my grief into a spreadsheet and my daughter's life into a security assessment." I know it's invasive and unfair, and you have every right to refuse." Evelyn stepped closer. "But I also need you to know something. I played Sophie's video for the board today." Lucas's eyes widened. "What video?" "The one she made last night, where she talked about bravery and holding on even when it's hard. She sent it to me and I showed it to 12 board members and told them that you and she matter more than my career." Evelyn's voice cracked. "I told them I'm done sacrificing my life for corporate success, that I want to lead differently, that I want you and Sophie and pancakes and terrible pizza and everything that comes with loving people who don't fit neatly into my world." "Evelyn, I'm not asking you to submit to investigation for my sake. I'm telling you that I'm willing to walk away from Crosstech if that's what choosing you means. But I also think there's a third option, one where we face this together, where you let me stand beside you through the scrutiny and prove to everyone, including ourselves, that what we have is real enough to survive it." Lucas ran his hands through his hair, the gesture she'd come to recognize as his processing mechanism. "Sophie made that video on her own?" "Your mother-in-law helped her use a phone, but yes, she did it because she believes in us, even when we'd already given up." "We didn't give up. We made a rational decision based on impossible circumstances." "We got scared," Evelyn corrected. "I got scared that I couldn't have both my career and a relationship. You got scared that staying with me would hurt Sophie, so we made the safe choice instead of the brave one." From down the hall, Sophie's voice called out, "Are you fighting or making up? Because making up is better." Despite everything, Lucas smiled. "She's been listening at the door since you got here. I would too if I were 7. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at her like he was trying to memorize her face. "If I do this, if I agree to the investigation, it's not just about us. It's about what kind of man I want Sophie to see me be. What I want to teach her about standing up for what matters, even when it's hard. I know. And it's about whether I trust you enough to believe that loving you is worth the cost of letting strangers judge my life." "Do you?" Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. "Trust me?" Lucas reached for her hand. "You stood in front of your board and risked everything to fight for a relationship that had already ended. You showed them a video of my daughter talking about dinosaurs and bravery. You chose vulnerability over power." He pulled her close. "Yeah, I trust you. So you'll do it? You'll let them investigate?" "On one condition. Sophie doesn't get pulled into this more than necessary. They can interview her teachers, look at school records, whatever they need. But they don't interrogate her directly. She's 7. She doesn't need to be part of corporate warfare. I'll make sure of it. And my mother-in-law. She's been through enough. They treat her with respect or the deal's off. Agreed. Lucas exhaled slowly. Okay. Tell them I'll cooperate. Schedule whatever interviews they need. Just get it done fast so we can move forward. Evelyn kissed him then, soft and grateful and full of relief. When they broke apart, Sophie was standing in the hallway with a knowing smile. I knew you'd make up, she said smugly. Grown-ups always do if they really like each other. How much did you hear? Lucas asked. All of it. You weren't exactly quiet. Sophie came over and hugged them both. Does this mean Evelyn can stay for dinner because I was planning tacos and you can't have tacos alone? That's sad. That's very wise, Evelyn said seriously. We definitely can't have sad tacos. Over dinner, tacos that Sophie insisted required architectural integrity, they talked about next steps. The investigation would start Monday. Lucas would meet with Crosstech's security team, answer questions about his employment history, provide financial records. It would probably take 2 weeks, maybe 3. What do we do until then? Lucas asked. Pretend everything's normal? We could try actually being normal, Evelyn suggested. No pretending, just living. What does that look like? I don't know. I've never been good at normal. She smiled. But I'd like to learn. So they did. For the next 2 weeks, while Crosstech's security team conducted their investigation, Evelyn and Lucas built something that looked remarkably like a life. She came over 3 nights a week for dinner. He texted her terrible dad jokes during her meetings. Sophie drew them into her elaborate dinosaur scenarios where they were paleontologists discovering new species. On Saturday, they took Sophie to the Science Museum. On Sunday, Lucas came to Evelyn's penthouse and taught her how to make proper pancakes while Sophie critiqued their technique. The apartment slowly felt less like a showpiece and more like a home. The investigation was invasive exactly as Lucas predicted. They interviewed his mother-in-law, Donna, who apparently gave them a 20-minute lecture about how Lucas was the best father she'd ever seen, and if they had any doubts about his character, they were idiots. They talked to Sophie's teachers, who confirmed he was actively involved in her education. They reviewed his finances and found exactly what Evelyn already knew: a man living within his means, supporting his daughter, with no suspicious transactions or hidden accounts. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. 2 weeks after the board meeting, Diane appeared in Evelyn's office with a folder. Security cleared him, she said without preamble. Lucas Reed is exactly who he says he is. Good father, honest man, no concerning connections. The team's recommendation is that he poses no security risk to Crosstech or to you. She set down the folder. I was wrong about him. You were protecting me. I was assuming the worst. There's a difference. Diane sat down. For what it's worth, I'm glad. You've been different these past few weeks. Lighter, more present. Whatever this thing is with Lucas, it's good for you. Even though it nearly cost me my job. Maybe especially because of that. You fought for something that mattered. That takes guts. Diane smiled slightly. And Sophie's video? That was brilliant. Manipulative as hell, but brilliant. I didn't plan that. I know. Which somehow made it more effective. Diane stood to leave, then paused. You know Richard's not done, right? He lost this battle, but he's already planning his next move. You need to be careful. I will be. After Diane left, Evelyn called Lucas. They cleared you, she said when he answered. Official recommendation is no security risk. Lucas exhaled audibly. So we're done? It's over? This part is over. Now we just have to figure out what comes next. I know what comes next. You come over tonight and Sophie makes you watch her school play rehearsal for the 40th time. Then we have pizza and you fall asleep on the couch during another documentary. Then I wake you up and kiss you goodnight and count the hours until I can see you again. Evelyn smiled. That sounds perfect. It's not glamorous, not what someone like you is probably used to. Someone like me is tired of glamorous. Someone like me wants tacos with proper architectural integrity and a 7-year-old's critique of my dinosaur knowledge. Then come home, Lucas said softly. We'll be waiting. Home. The words settled into her chest like something that had been missing, finally clicking into place. That evening, Evelyn sat through Sophie's rehearsal of a play about the water cycle. Sophie played a rain cloud with enthusiasm that bordered on aggressive. Afterward, they had pizza, and Sophie fell asleep between them during a documentary about plate tectonics, her head on Evelyn's shoulder and her feet in Lucas's lap. "This is what normal looks like," Lucas whispered. "Kid falling asleep during educational programming while we pretend we're still watching. I like it. Even though you're probably missing some important business dinner?" "Especially because I'm missing some important business dinner." Evelyn looked at him over Sophie's sleeping form. "I meant what I told the board. I'm done sacrificing my life for work. If that means I miss some networking opportunities or don't respond to emails at midnight, so be it." "That's a big change." "It's a necessary change, and maybe it makes me a different kind of leader, one who actually models the work-life balance we claim to value." Lucas reached over and took her hand. "I love you. I know it's fast and probably too soon to say it, but I love you. Not the CEO or the billionaire or the woman who appears in Forbes. Just Evelyn, the person who tries really hard to learn about dinosaurs and burns pancakes and looks at my daughter like she's remarkable." Evelyn's throat tightened. "I love you too, even though you're right that it's terrifyingly fast and probably crazy and definitely not how I planned my life to go." "How did you plan your life to go?" "Alone, successful and powerful, and completely alone." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you for ruining that plan." They carried Sophie to bed together, moving in sync like they'd been doing this for years. Evelyn tucked the purple octopus beside her while Lucas pulled up the blankets. In sleep, Sophie looked impossibly young and vulnerable, and Evelyn felt the weight of loving her settle alongside the love she felt for Lucas. This was what she'd been missing. Not just romantic love, but the bigger love of family. The messy, complicated, beautiful tangle of people choosing each other every day. Later, lying in Lucas's bed with his arms around her, Evelyn made a decision. "I want to do something," she said into the darkness. "Something that might sound crazy. I've learned that your version of crazy usually means revolutionary. What is it?" "I want to implement actual work-life balance policies at CrossTech. Not just lip service, but real changes. Flexible schedules, remote work options, on-site childcare, support for single parents." She turned to face him. "I want to build a company where people like you don't have to choose between being good parents and having careers. Where taking care of family isn't seen as a weakness, but as a strength." Lucas was quiet. "Then, that would have changed my life. 3 years ago, if Microsoft had offered that kind of support, maybe I wouldn't have had to quit. Maybe I could have been both an engineer and a present father." "That's exactly my point. How many brilliant people are we losing because we demand total sacrifice? How many innovations are we missing because parents are too exhausted to think creatively?" Evelyn felt energy building. "I can change that, at least at CrossTech. Make it a model for what tech companies could be." "Richard will fight you." "Richard fights everything, but I just survived a vote of no confidence. I have political capital, and I have proof that personal happiness doesn't compromise professional excellence. It enhances it." Lucas kissed her. "This is why I love you. You take personal pain and transform it into systemic change. You're remarkable." "I'm learning from a 7-year-old who thinks dinosaurs can teach us about evolution and bravery." "She's wise beyond her years." "She is, which is why I want to ask you something else, something bigger." Evelyn took a breath. "Move in with me, you and Sophie. Not immediately. I know she needs stability and change is hard, but eventually, make my penthouse into a home instead of a showpiece." Lucas pulled back to look at her. "That's a huge step." "I know, too fast?" "Maybe, but maybe fast is okay when it feels right." He smiled. "Sophie would need her own room, space for all her dinosaur books and fossil collection, and a real kitchen since mine is better than yours. We could renovate, make it work for all of us. And my job? I can't exactly commute from your penthouse to my night shift." Evelyn had been thinking about this. "What if you didn't have to? What if you could go back to engineering? Not at Microsoft. I know that ship has sailed, but at CrossTech. We're always looking for talented engineers, and you were top of your class at MIT." "I've been out of the field for 3 years. So you'll need some retraining. We have programs for that. And we're implementing those family-friendly policies I mentioned so you could work flexible hours. Be home for Sophie's bedtime, attend school plays. She saw him considering it. I'm not offering because we're together. I'm offering because you're brilliant and we'd be lucky to have you. But I won't push if you're not ready. Lucas was silent for a long time. Let me think about it. Talk to Sophie. Make sure she's okay with this kind of change. Of course, no pressure. I just wanted you to know the option exists. They fell asleep holding each other, and Evelyn dreamed of a future that felt possible for the first time in years. The conversation with Sophie happened over breakfast 2 days later. Lucas had made Mickey Mouse pancakes, a Sunday tradition, and Sophie was explaining her theory about why Stegosaurus plates were for temperature regulation and not just defense. Sophie, Lucas interrupted gently, Evelyn and I want to talk to you about something important. Sophie's eyes went wide. Are you getting married? Because Emma's parents just got engaged and she got to be a flower girl and wear a fancy dress. Not married, not yet. Lucas glanced at Evelyn. But we are talking about living together. Evelyn has a big apartment with space for all of us. What would you think about moving there? Sophie considered this with her characteristic seriousness. Would I have my own room? Yes, Evelyn said, and we'd decorate it however you want. Dinosaurs, space, whatever makes you happy. Would I still go to the same school? Same school, same friends, same everything. Just a different address. And Dad would be there every night? Not working while I'm sleeping? Lucas's expression softened. That's part of the plan. Evelyn's company wants to hire me as an engineer. I'd work during the day while you're at school and be home at night, like other families. Sophie looked between them. So you'd be home for bedtime stories? Every night. And we could all have dinner together? As much as we want. Sophie turned to Evelyn. And you'd be there too? Not just visiting, but actually living with us? If that's okay with you, I know I'm not your mom. I'll never try to replace her, but I'd like to be part of your family, if you'll have me. Sophie slid out of her chair and came around the table to hug Evelyn fiercely. I wanted to ask, but Dad said I shouldn't rush things. But I really want you to stay. You make Dad happy, and you're good at learning about dinosaurs even when you don't understand them at first. Evelyn held her tight, overwhelmed. Is that a yes? It's a definitely yes, but I have conditions. Sophie pulled back, suddenly businesslike. We need to get a cat, an orange one named Professor Whiskers, and I get to show you my school when you come to pick me up so everyone knows you're part of my family, and we have to keep making pancakes on Sundays because it's tradition. Those are very reasonable conditions, Evelyn said seriously. I accept them all. Good. Then you can marry Dad. Sophie returned to her pancakes like she hadn't just casually proposed their marriage. Lucas laughed. Sophie, we're not... Eventually you will. It's obvious. You have the same face Grandma Donna has when she talks about Grandpa, the love face. Sophie took a bite of pancake. But you should probably live together first. Test it out. That's what Emma's parents did. Over the next month, they began the transition. Evelyn hired architects to renovate part of her penthouse, creating a proper bedroom for Sophie, complete with shelves for her books and fossils, a reading nook shaped like a dinosaur nest, and walls painted with a prehistoric mural. Lucas's room, their room, was redesigned to feel less sterile, more lived in. The kitchen was completely redone to Lucas's specifications. When he saw it for the first time, he actually teared up. You didn't have to do all this, he said, running his hand over the new counters. I wanted to. This isn't my space anymore. It's our space. It should feel like home to all of us. At Crosstech, Evelyn began implementing the changes she'd promised. Flexible work schedules, remote options, on-site childcare with subsidized rates for single parents. The initiatives faced pushback from some board members, primarily Richard Castellano. But Evelyn pushed through anyway. She'd survived one vote of no confidence. She could survive another if it came to that. Lucas started his retraining program, working with Crosstech's senior engineers to get back up to speed. He was rusty at first, struggling with 3 years of technological advancement, but his fundamental brilliance was still there, and within weeks he was contributing to projects in meaningful ways. The best part was watching him come home at 6 o'clock, still in time to make dinner with Sophie and hear about her day. No more night shifts, no more exhaustion, just a dad being present. Sophie adjusted to the penthouse with remarkable ease. She declared her room scientifically perfect and immediately began organizing her fossils by geological period across the shelves. She made friends with the doorman, James, who started keeping juice boxes at his station specifically for her. She brought Emma over for playdates and gave tours of the building like she owned it. "And this is where Evelyn works," Sophie would explain, showing off the home office Evelyn had set up. "She runs a really big company, but she still has time to help me with math homework." 3 months after the board meeting, Evelyn received an unexpected call from Donna, Lucas's mother-in-law. "I need to meet you," Donna said. "Just the two of us. There's something we should discuss." They met at a coffee shop in Fremont. Donna was in her 60s, with kind eyes and her late daughter's smile. She hugged Evelyn immediately. "Thank you for coming," Donna said once they sat down. "I know this might seem strange, but I needed to see you face to face." "Is everything okay? Is Lucas? Lucas is wonderful, happier than I've seen him since Laura died. Sophie talks about you constantly. That's actually what I wanted to discuss." Donna took a breath. "My daughter was the love of Lucas's life. They were perfect together, and when she died, I watched him break into pieces. Watched him give up everything to be the parent Sophie needed." Evelyn's chest tightened. "I'm not trying to replace her." "I know. That's what makes this easier." Donna smiled through tears. "Laura would have loved you, would have appreciated how you've brought joy back into their lives without trying to erase her memory. Sophie still talks about her mother, still has pictures in her room, and you've never asked her not to. Laura is part of who they are. I'd never want to change that. That's why I'm here, to tell you that you have my blessing. Not that you need it, but I wanted you to know." Donna reached across and took Evelyn's hand. "You've given my son-in-law a reason to hope again. You've been patient with my granddaughter's questions and enthusiasm. You've honored Laura's memory by loving her family well. That's all I could ever ask for." Evelyn was crying now, unable to stop. "I love them so much, both of them. I didn't know I could love like this." "That's the best kind of love. The unexpected kind that changes everything." Donna squeezed her hand. "Laura used to say that love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone who made you want to be better. You make Lucas want to be better. That's a gift." They talked for another hour. Donna shared stories about Laura, about the early years with Lucas, about watching Sophie grow up with one parent instead of two. She made Evelyn promise to bring Sophie to visit more often, to keep including her in family dinners and celebrations. "You're part of this family now," Donna said as they were leaving. "Not just Lucas's partner, part of all of us. That's how family works." When Evelyn got home that evening, she found Lucas and Sophie in the kitchen making dinner. Sophie was standing on a stool, carefully measuring ingredients while Lucas supervised. They were laughing about something, flour dusting Sophie's nose. This was her life now, this beautiful, chaotic, perfect life she'd stumbled into because she'd been too scared to attend a gala alone. "How was your meeting with Grandma?" Lucas asked, looking up. "Wonderful. She's amazing." Evelyn came over and kissed him, then Sophie. "And she made me promise to bring you both to dinner this weekend." "Can we make dinosaur cookies?" Sophie asked. "I have a theory about using different shaped cookie cutters to demonstrate evolutionary diversity." "That's very scientific," Evelyn said seriously. "We should definitely test that theory." 6 months after that first desperate night at midnight, Evelyn stood in the Crosstech boardroom for the quarterly earnings presentation. The numbers were strong. The new work-life balance initiatives had actually increased productivity. Employee retention was up. Innovation metrics had improved. Even Richard Castellano couldn't find fault with the results. After the meeting, the chairman pulled her aside. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. The board is impressed. Investors are happy. You've proven that running a successful company doesn't require sacrificing everything else." He smiled. "You're changing the industry, Evelyn. Other tech companies are watching and implementing similar policies. You've started something important." That evening, Evelyn came home to find Lucas and Sophie on the couch with Professor Whiskers, the orange cat they'd adopted last month, sprawled across their laps. They were watching a documentary about the Jurassic period. Sophie saw her and immediately launched into an explanation about Diplodocus vertebrae. And the really cool part is that their necks had these special joints that let them reach really tall trees, but also sweep the ground for low vegetation. Maximum efficiency. Evolution is so smart. Evelyn sat beside them, and Professor Whiskers immediately migrated to her lap. Lucas put his arm around her shoulders. "Good day?" he asked. "The best. The board loved the quarterly numbers. The new policies are working." Richard was suspiciously quiet, which probably means he's planning something, but for today I'll take it. She leaned into Lucas. "How was your day?" "Solved a coding problem that's been bothering the team for weeks. Picked up Sophie from school. Had a parent-teacher conference where her teacher said she's excelling in everything except staying quiet during lessons because she has too much enthusiasm about facts." "That sounds like a Sophie problem," Evelyn said, kissing the top of Sophie's head. "It's not a problem. It's sharing knowledge. Mrs. Patterson just doesn't appreciate how important it is to discuss Mesozoic flora during math class." They dissolved into laughter. Professor Whiskers meowed indignantly at being jostled. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep and they were lying in bed together, Lucas turned to Evelyn with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I want to ask you something," he said. "And you can say no. There's no pressure, but I've been thinking about it for a while and I think I'm ready." Evelyn's heart started racing. "Okay." "Marry me." The words hung in the air, simple, perfect, terrifying. "Lucas, I know we said we weren't ready, that we needed to make sure this worked before making any big commitments. But it's been 6 months and every day I'm more sure. I want to marry you. I want Sophie to officially have you as family. I want to build a life where we're legally, officially, permanently together." He took her hand. "I don't have a ring yet. Didn't plan this out. Just realized tonight, watching you come home and fit into our life so perfectly, that I don't want to wait anymore." Evelyn felt tears streaming down her face. "You're supposed to be the practical one, the one who thinks things through." "I am thinking it through. I'm thinking about how you've changed everything, how you fought for us when it would have been easier to walk away, how you love my daughter like she's yours, how you've made me remember what happiness feels like." His voice roughened. "I'm thinking about how I want to spend the rest of my life with you, so I'm asking, will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out choked with emotion. "Yes, absolutely yes." Lucas kissed her deeply, pulling her close. When they broke apart, they were both crying and laughing and holding each other like they'd never let go. "Sophie's going to lose her mind," Lucas said. "She's been asking when we're getting married since the day we moved in." "She called it 6 months ago." "She did. Kids got good instincts." They told Sophie over breakfast the next morning. She was eating cereal and explaining her latest theory about why pterodactyls weren't actually dinosaurs, when Lucas interrupted her. "Sophie, Evelyn and I have something to tell you." Sophie looked up, immediately alert. "Are we getting a dog? Because I know we just got Professor Whiskers, but dogs are important for—" "We're getting married," Evelyn said. Sophie's spoon clattered into her bowl. "Really? You're really getting married?" "Really," Lucas confirmed. "If that's okay with you." "If that's... Of course it's okay. I've been waiting forever." Sophie jumped out of her chair and hugged them both. "Can I be in the wedding? Can I wear a fancy dress? Can Professor Whiskers be the ring bearer?" "All of that is negotiable," Lucas said, laughing. "Except maybe Professor Whiskers. He's not very reliable." "When is the wedding? Can we have dinosaur decorations? Can my friends come? Can we—" "We haven't planned any of that yet," Evelyn said. "We just decided last night, but you'll help us plan everything, I promise." Sophie was practically vibrating with excitement. "This is the best day ever. I need to tell Emma and Grandma Donna and Mrs. Patterson and—" "Maybe wait until we've told Grandma Donna first," Lucas suggested. "Let the adults know before you announce it to your entire second-grade class." But Sophie was already running to her room to make a list of everyone who needed to know, leaving Lucas and Evelyn alone at the breakfast table with half-eaten cereal and Professor Whiskers winding between their legs. "Well," Lucas said, "that went well. She's going to plan this entire wedding, isn't she?" "Oh, absolutely. We're going to have dinosaur centerpieces and a paleontology-themed cake. Just accept it now." Evelyn laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I can live with that." The wedding happened 3 months later in a small ceremony at the aquarium, Sophie's choice. They stood in front of the octopus exhibit with 30 close friends and family watching. Sophie served as maid of honor and took her duties extremely seriously, including a speech about how evolution proved that adaptation was necessary for survival and her dad and Evelyn had adapted perfectly to each other. Donna cried through the entire ceremony. Diane was there, having become something approaching a real friend over the past months. Marcus coordinated everything with military precision. Even Richard Castellano sent a polite card, though he didn't attend. When the officiant asked if Evelyn took Lucas to be her husband, she looked at him, this man who'd agreed to pretend for 7 minutes and stayed for forever, and said yes without hesitation. When Lucas kissed her, Sophie cheered loudly enough that several actual aquarium visitors turned to see what the commotion was about. At the reception, held in the aquarium's banquet hall with, as predicted, dinosaur centerpieces, Evelyn stood with a glass of champagne and watched Lucas dance with Sophie to some pop song she'd chosen. They were both laughing, completely unselfconscious in their joy. Diane appeared at her elbow. "You did good," she said. "I had my doubts, but you proved me wrong. He's the real deal." He is. And Sophie's a force of nature. That speech about evolution and adaptation, she's going to run a company someday. Or discover a new dinosaur species. Or both. Kids got range. Diane clinked her glass against Evelyn's. To unexpected love stories that start with terrible decisions and end with dinosaur-themed weddings. I'll drink to that. Later, when the reception was winding down and Sophie had finally crashed from sugar and excitement, Lucas found Evelyn on the aquarium terrace where they'd first kissed at that gala 6 months ago. "Hey," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "My wife. My husband." The words felt new and strange and perfect. "Thank you." For what? For saying yes to 7 minutes. For staying when you could have left. For loving me even when I didn't know how to love myself. She turned in his arms. "For giving me this life. You gave me this life." Reminded me that grief doesn't have to be the end of the story. That hoping again isn't betraying the people we've lost. Lucas kissed her softly. "Laura would have liked you. Would have appreciated how you've loved Sophie and made space for her memory." "I hope so. I know so." She believed in second chances. Believed that love could exist in multiple forms without diminishing what came before. He smiled. "You're my second chance, Evelyn. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life being grateful for it." They stood together on the terrace, watching the city lights reflect off the water, and Evelyn thought about the journey that brought them here. A desperate lie at midnight. 7 borrowed minutes that stretched into a lifetime. A janitor and a CEO learning that love didn't respect hierarchies or logic or careful planning. Inside, Sophie was asleep on Donna's lap, still clutching her purple octopus. Professor Whiskers was probably destroying something in their penthouse. Crosstech would have new challenges tomorrow. Richard Castellano would keep plotting. Life would continue with all its complications and demands. But for tonight, Evelyn had everything she'd never known she needed. A husband who made her laugh. A daughter who taught her about dinosaurs and bravery. A family built from loss and hope and the courage to try again. "What are you thinking?" Lucas asked. "That I spent 15 years building an empire and it took 7 minutes with you to realize I'd been building the wrong thing." She looked up at him. "Thank you for teaching me the difference between success and happiness. Thank you for being brave enough to choose happiness, even when it was scary." They kissed as the city hummed around them, no longer pretending, no longer counting minutes, just being together in a moment that would stretch into years and decades and a lifetime of shared pancakes and terrible pizza and elaborate theories about prehistoric life. 7 minutes had become forever. And forever had started with a lie that became the most honest thing either of them had ever done. Inside the aquarium, Sophie stirred awake just long enough to see them through the glass doors. She smiled, hugged her octopus tighter, and went back to sleep, secure in the knowledge that her family was complete and her theories about love and adaptation had been proven scientifically correct. Evolution, after all, was about more than just survival. It was about transformation, about becoming something new without forgetting what came before, about two people from different worlds finding a way to build a third world together, one that held space for grief and joy, power and vulnerability, billion-dollar companies, and hand-drawn dinosaur pictures on the refrigerator. The rain started falling again, soft against the glass, and Lucas pulled Evelyn closer. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "Yeah," she said, meaning it with her whole heart. "Let's go home." And they did, taking Sophie and Donna and all the messy, beautiful pieces of their combined lives, driving through the rain-washed Seattle streets to the penthouse that had finally become a home, where 7 minutes had grown into forever, and forever was just beginning.